This
then
conference will
recording,
now be recorded.
as they say, and this recording, I guess, will be available somewhere. We are officially recording these meetings using this GoToMeeting, and so we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the Republic,
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty,
with
and for all.
justice
For all.
Okay, and to be honest, I don't think these things were invented for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. All right. Moving on. As said, the first thing will be approval of the minutes. Oh wait, no. The first thing will be a roll call.
Roll call. Dave Dunbar.
Here.
Brian Height.
Here.
Diane Kelly.
Here.
Bill McNair.
Here.
Vincent Quinn. Not here. Alan Tope.
Here.
David Wilson.
Here.
6 members present. That is sufficient for a quorum.
Okay. All right. The first thing then will be to go through the minutes. The minutes were in the package. Does anybody have any revisions to the minutes? Hearing none, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's Diane and Brian.
Correct.
Okay. A roll call vote.
David Dunbar.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Aye.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. Minutes are approved. And now we're going to move on to the agenda item 3, which is subdivision review. And today's agenda is on Ridge Farm, Major Plan 2017-101, and request for preliminary plan review. We will have a staff presentation just to introduce all of these. And then for each of the 12 waivers requested, we will go through applicant presentation, courtesy of the floor, and planning commission decision, so that we will handle them all one by one. So, Greg, do you want to start off, and if you do anything? You may have already said everything, but
Well, I can go through location and intent and then do the recommendation. Be lengthy, but worth it. This is an application to develop the properties located at Huckleberry Road, pin 5487-464-22139, which is zoned T&D residential cluster overlay. Huckleberry Road, pin 5487-6754-4734, which is also zoned T&D residential cluster overlay. 2523 Huckleberry Road, which is also zoned T&D cluster overlay. 2582 Huckleberry Road, which is also zoned T&D cluster residential cluster overlay. 1802 North Cedar Crest Boulevard, zoned R4 and T&D residential cluster overlay. Huckleberry Road, pin 5487-2734-3134, which is zoned RR2. Cedar Crest Boulevard, pin 2657-1146, which is zoned RR. Huckleberry Road pin 5487-2730-3984, which is zoned RR as well. Cedar Crest Boulevard pin 5487-2632-3076, which is zoned R2. 1926 Cedar Crest Boulevard, which is zoned R2. And 1928 Cedar Crest Boulevard, which is also zoned R2. The plan proposes a TND residential cluster development on approximately 138.34 acres, consisting of 68 single-family dwelling units, 88 age-restricted single dwelling units, 74 two-unit dwelling units, 82 age-restricted two-unit dwelling units, a clubhouse, 308 apartment units in 11 28-unit apartment buildings, 5 condominium apartment buildings containing 60 apartment units, 2 3-story and 2 4-story mixed-use buildings containing 27,200 square feet of commercial and restaurant space on the first floor and 100 apartments above, 2 1-story 5,000 square foot commercial restaurant buildings, 1 30,000 square foot medical office, and a community clubhouse, stormwater management facilities, and approximately 39.604 acres of open space, of which 13.263 acres is active open space. The plan also proposes 64 two-unit dwelling units in the R4 portion, 9 single dwelling units in the R2 portion, 9 single dwelling units in the RR portion, and 9 single dwelling units in the RR2 portion. All units proposed are to be served by public water and sewer. K. Walbert LLC is the owner and applicant. The Community Development Department issued a submission receipt dated March 20th, 2020, confirming that the application meets the submission requirements of SALDO. The department's technical review was dated July 13th. I believe we have a more recent review sometime in August, and provides comments pertaining to plan information, safety-related comments, street lighting, erosion and sedimentation control, sewage facilities planning, and official map and comprehensive plan consistency. The department recommends that the Planning Commission take the plan under advisement to afford the applicant the time necessary to address the reviewing agency's comments, contingent upon the applicant granting a waiver to the time frame in which to act upon the plan should the applicant not be ready to appear before the commissioners at their September 16th meeting. Now, we will need one regardless, because if I understand it, the applicant is seeking to go to the commissioners with waiver request. However, the plan will not be acted upon by that time, as I understand it. So we will need some sort of waiver request either way.
Okay. And is that okay with the applicant?
All right.
Mr. President?
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's agreeable.
Okay. All right. As I said, we will be going through these one by one. We will have the applicant presentation, courtesy of the floor, and then the Planning Commission decision on each. And as I said earlier, we're going to go, we grouped them so that the subjects were similar, get them, group them together so that some of the same thing. The first set will be the geotechnical, and it was Langen's item number 4. So I'll turn it over to Langen for the discussion.
If I may, Jim Preston here for the applicant, attorney for the applicant. Jason's here. He's going to address all these. Number 4, which is the first one on my list, as you said, Mr. Chair, is a waiver for the requirement to grade slopes to a 1/3 grade to allow a grade of 1/2 on the hillside south of Huckleberry Road. I understand that the geotech review from Hanover, they've requested some additional information. We should probably provide that before we move on to a decision on that one. I would ask that we just skip that one for now and move on to, I guess, number 6, and then give Jason an opportunity to provide that additional information.
Okay, so we're going to and you're saying so at another time?
Yes, I believe so. Jason, you're on?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
go ahead.
So I just, as I was listening to Tony discuss that with the board at the pre-meeting, it occurred to me that we should provide, based on his conversation with Chris Taylor at Hanover, we should provide some additional information. A 2-to-1 slope is not an unusual condition, and that existing slope is the existing condition is roughly 2-to-1, but it sounds like there may be some more analysis to get him comfortable with it. So that rather than waste the board's time on that issue, I thought we could bypass that one for this evening, because it then would put you in a difficult position where your geotechnical engineer is not comfortable recommending it to you. It's somewhat of an independent issue. A lot of the issues we're discussing, and this is the third meeting on these items. A lot of those issues are those that will impact the plan layout, and as we were looking forward to trying to revise the plans based on all the comments to date. So this one's somewhat independent. It really is either we extend the retaining wall along that frontage, or we propose a grade steeper than essentially a grade that's similar to what's out there today. So yes, I know it's a long-winded way to saying that, but I would hope that I could spend some more time with the geotechnical engineer on that issue, and we could work to resolve it. So
good. That sounds just fine. The next one is number 6, and this is the discussing the 2% grade, allowing a 0% grade on the floors of the basins.
yes, yeah, and let me start off by saying, thank you for scheduling a special meeting for us tonight. I know everyone's busy and taking time out, so we appreciate that. The 2% grade, that's we've discussed that in the past, and essentially almost all stormwater basins and stormwater BMPs are designed with a flat bottom. In our case, they're infiltration facilities. There are other stormwater BMPs like wetlands planted basins, extended detention basins. They all really have a 0% slope. They're both basically flat bottom. So it's pretty typical, and it really follows the stormwater BMP manual that the state has put together and the county expects. The 2% grade was an older grass line detention basin requirement that you saw a lot 20 years ago. It doesn't really apply in many situations today. So, and I think your geotechnical engineer is okay with that. He's looking for more feedback and more testing on the infiltration capability. But regardless of whether it's an infiltration basin or some of them end up being a wetlands planted basin, something along those lines, they'll still have a flat bottom. So
okay.
Are there any questions on that particular item?
That's fine on that. You're intending to supply, he did ask for some additional, besides that, he had some additional information. What does this apply to, and things like that. Will you be collecting that information for him, in your discussion as you go?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's other comments we need to address on the stormwater facilities. There's additional testing we're going to do on site. It doesn't impact the scope of the waiver, which is just the flat bottom of the stormwater basin. But yes, I will certainly provide them the additional information.
No, I agree with that. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Are there any comments from the floor? And we'll be looking to see if any put anything in the chat room.
Yeah, this is Dave on the planning commission. I would say that's pretty standard to have a flat bottom. It's actually recommended for infiltration facilities. So I don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
Request.
Okay. And any other questions from the board? Comments from the board?
I just have a general, I don't know if I'm muted, here we go. This is Diane Kelly. The comments as to the drainage plan review, consistency with Act 167. So with these flat bottoms that you're asking for a waiver from, can you please provide some information of how those comments from the LVDC relate to this particular waiver?
Excuse me. Sorry, having a technical issue there. We are in receipt of Lehigh Valley Planning Commission's comments on the Act 167. They don't really focus on this similar question to that the geotechnical engineer is asking, just to confirm that they're appropriate for infiltration. There really isn't a comments related to whether or not they're flat bottom or not. I honestly don't think I've designed a stormwater facility in the last 10 years that doesn't have a flat bottom or something along similar to that. The last basin I designed had a 2% slope on the bottom. Had to be over 10, 12 years ago.
Okay. And I guess Diane brought it up, but that was probably the focus comments from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. That there were additional information to complete the Act 167 drainage plan requirements. Any issues with those comments?
I'm sorry, just to circle back, if I may do a follow-up question, as I read through this review letter for the Act 167, there are quite a few deficiencies noted, and the conclusion of the Director of Environmental Planning stated that the drainage plan had been found to be inconsistent with Act 167 requirements, and that there were portions of the drainage plan that they weren't reviewed. Concerning water quality, the details of design of the proposed water quality BMPs, erosion and sediment control plan, and runoff collection system. Just again, I'm asking if you could comment on this particular waiver and the comments here.
So I'm reading over the Act 167 drainage plan review. So Lehigh Valley Planning Commission only does a global drainage plan review to make sure you meet the Act 167 requirements. They don't go as in depth as your engineer might. The language that's in the letter, as far as being deficient, that's the same language you get in every letter the first time you submit to them with an application. There really isn't any comments on the flat bottom basins. The comments here concern, this is a pretty large project and pretty extensive. Most of them include they were looking for clarifications on drainage area boundaries, for grading contours, things that make their review easier for them to read and understand. There's some technical comments on hydrographs that come out of the stormwater computation software we use, and some recommendations as far as how we illustrate the plans to make their lives easier to review. But I don't see anything in here concerning anything that would impact this waiver.
And if you take those comments and those from the engineer as well concerning this particular waiver, where he states the viability of infiltrating stormwater at each basin location has not yet been demonstrated, as referenced in the comment, that the infiltration needs to be shown to be feasible by adequate soil testing, and grading of the berms can be properly designed. So in granting this waiver, how is this board to be satisfied that these things will be properly designed to go along with that? I mean, what?
You could certainly condition any recommendation on satisfying your engineers. Like, we certainly wouldn't have any objection to that. Again, it's my job to I provided a great deal of infiltration data, and we're planning some additional testing next week. Ultimately, if one or two of the basins your engineers feel uncomfortable with infiltration, it will still end up being a flat bottom basin. It may convert to another type of stormwater BMP. I feel confident they'll all infiltrate, and they do now, and the testing we provided shows that. But he's looking for additional testing at certain depths that we're working on obtaining for them next week, or next couple weeks. So it doesn't really impact the request. The request remains, and certainly condition it if you feel you need to.
Okay. All right.
But
Any other? Okay, go ahead, Diane.
you're saying that the testing that will further shore up this particular waiver isn't going to be done until next week?
Again, it doesn't really directly relate to the waiver. There is additional testing we're doing to satisfy comments, and we'll continue to do going forward. You know, there's a number of stormwater comments we have to satisfy throughout the letters. And I did provide a great deal of infiltration data, but he's asking for additional data. So, but it regardless won't change that it is a flat bottom basin.
Is there any additional comment? I don't mean to put Tony from Pidcock on the spot, but is there any additional information that you would want to offer to the board at this point?
Really, the reason for this waiver is similar to what Jason said. So back in when the ordinance was drafted, we requested the ordinance requested 2% basin, and what that did is all the basins drained directly down to the outlet structure and out. Now, within the last 5 to 10 years, the Conservation District and DEP went through and said that they want to recharge the water table, if you will, with stormwater. So what you're doing is you're either using these basins as an infiltration basin, which means that you're taking a portion of your stormwater, soaking it back down into the ground to recharge the water table, or you do other things like you store the water and then spray it out through a sprinkler system. But what you're still trying to do is remove the extra runoff, the extra rainfall from just receiving the creek, and it's also supposed to recharge the area around it as if it was still a field. You know, normally when it rains, the field just soaks the water in. So the reason for this waiver is that, to summarize, if you don't mind, what Jason said, is that they're looking to use these basins for infiltration. If the infiltration doesn't work, it will be Jason's job, I guess, to figure out another way to recharge the water table with this water. But that's really the difference between the 2% bottom and a flat bottom, is really what the waiver is for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And we're actually, as I'm looking at this, we actually started with number 6. The question here, we'll go back to number 4 after this. Any other questions from the board?
This is request number 6, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, George and Greg, could we show the waiver letter rather than just the rules for remote participation? So, our audience can follow along. I don't know if that's possible or not.
Maybe. I gotta find it. Might take me a couple of minutes, but I'll do my best here.
We'll be here all night. So no, it just seems like it would be better so everybody can follow along. Right.
Okay. We do have.
But wasn't waiver 4 they wanted to drop for now until they get more detail to the.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we're on number 6.
Yep.
Yeah, and so there are some questions here. How do we want to do this?
Are you done with the staff and planning commission questions?
Any other questions from the planning commission? Okay.
All right,
Yes.
do you want me to go to the public?
Yes.
All right, so we have 2 questions right now. One is Judy Payavasan of 1005 Bryant Street in Allentown. She asks, what is the savings to the builder that he requests a 0 grade? Cedar Creek Farm retention ponds seem to be working. Were those flat? Wouldn't this waiver mean all future developments can do flat bottom? Judy, if you're out there, do you have any more to add? I guess Judy has nothing more to add, so that's her question.
Jason, do you want
There really isn't any cost differential. That's not what this is about. It's really about the current state stormwater management, best management practices standards really dictate this. So it's probably something, and it's you might want to consider amending in your ordinance. I can't imagine that it's not going to continue to come up, and probably does. So, but there's not a cost implication.
This is David Wilson. I'd just like to reiterate this. With infiltration, having a flat bottom is what the conservation district and PADEP require. So I would actually say our ordinance in those terms is a bit outdated. In terms of construction cost, the developer is going to be grading in a big basin, whether they put in a flat bottom or a bottom that has a very slight 2% slope. That's not going to be a cost savings either way. It's the state requires flat bottoms for stormwater facilities. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Okay, the next question is a Roseanne Pasiotti of 1720 Saratoga Court. She asked, will the developer be providing financial backing, i.e. a bond or a letter of credit, in the event that a stormwater management solution is insufficient to handle the water from a large storm such as we had on 8/4? Also, would it also be sufficient to repair any damage caused by the runoff? Roseanne, if you're out there, if you want to add something more, now is the time.
Yeah, this happened to my neighbors when I lived in the Philadelphia suburbs, and the township at the time drew on I don't know if it was a bond or a letter of credit, but they made the developer liable for the damage that was caused to the property down. So that's my question. Is stormwater runoff issue in that field now with the additional development? We just need to make sure that whatever retention ponds go in up there, they're going to be sufficient to handle all of the water, and not just on a regular, slow kind of a gentle rain, but from a large storm. And if they, if we do get runoff, the township would hold the developer liable to make any repairs. I would think the stormwater management, plan, the retention pond should be sufficient. And if they're not, then someone needs to be accountable rather than the residents downstream. That's it.
Okay. How do we address? Solicitor Zader, do you have any comments? It seems like it's a liability question.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I'll take it in parts. With regard to security, the improvement construction itself will be secured by the township, most likely in the form of a letter of credit. When that improvement, when the stormwater basin, in this case, multiple basins are constructed, the township typically will have a maintenance period, it's called, of 18 months, in which the proper functioning of the improvement is essentially evaluated to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now, I don't recall, perhaps somebody from staff or from the developer could share with me, is it correct that these basins are going to be privately owned and maintained, or are they being offered for dedication?
They'll be privately owned and maintained.
Okay. They'll be privately owned and maintained by the homeowners association. What that means in terms of the question that's been asked is that if there's a problem with the basin, it's the responsibility of the homeowners association to take care of that problem. And that means that the individual owners of property within the development that are part of the association would effectively share the bill to take care of something that is malfunctioning. The township will be imposing, in connection with the approval of this project, should it ever get to that point and be approved, the township would be imposing a series of covenants that would supplement covenants that the developer no doubt would be imposing on property owners within the project. And I can tell you that my intent with regard to those covenants would be, number one, it's a responsibility of the association to take care of those problems that crop up. Secondarily, the township would have a right but not an obligation to do so at the expense of the homeowners association. Now, with regard to the part of the question that deals with, let's just bear with me here, a large storm, I think what I just mentioned would cover the way that would work. That would also cover the part of the question that deals with damage, I believe. So I think I've answered the question. Thank you.
Okay.
So may I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So when you said there'd be an 18-month maintenance period, can you explain what that's all about?
I'd be glad to. With any development, as you can imagine, once the approval process is complete and it's time for the developer to move ahead with construction of roads, installation of utilities, placing infrastructure for water and sewer in place, moving ahead with stormwater management facilities. And actually, stormwater is one of the first things, if not the first thing that has to happen because of the earth moving activities of grading and requirements of township, conservation district, and DEP. All of that takes some measure of time, and depending upon the size and complexity of the project, that could be short, it could be long. For a project of this magnitude, it's going to be a very lengthy process by which it would go on for the construction of these various improvements. But then when improvements are completed and inspected by the township, they, at that point, start a clock of 18 months for what's referred to commonly as the maintenance period. And when a township like South Whitehall inspects any improvement, the goal of that inspection, and depending upon the improvement, the township engineer or staff may have been actually on site watching all or portions of that construction process. When that construction is complete and it's time to start the time clock on the maintenance period, that's an 18-month period in which there's still security posted, but instead of being the full amount of security for the construction of the improvement, it's typically 15% of the cost of installation of that improvement. And that 15% remains in place as security for 18 months. That's the statutory time period under the Municipalities Planning Code that a township is allowed to have a maintenance period to ensure the proper functioning of that improvement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Monica Hodges of Penn's Crossing. Her question is, why is the waiver needed?
And I think we have answered that with the it's the 2%. It's just a change in the design standards, and maybe we need to change the requirement to match the current stormwater design standards.
Okay. Next one up, Jeff Epstein. His question is, my concern is relative to the cemetery at the easternmost part of the site and water runoff into the KI cemetery. He adds, it appears that we will be getting larger 200-year storms, etc. Jeff, if you're present and want to add more, go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I know today's standards, you try to infiltrate a lot of water back into the ground. Our concern is with the cemeteries on the very easternmost edge of this development and south and down the hill from this development a little bit. We are pretty well flat where we are. I see you have a retaining wall to the north side of the townhouses that are being planned in that area. On the south side, I see there's one small basin to the southeast corner of that site. And I just am concerned that with the property where the cemeteries are, that we don't have a water issue. I don't know what the standard design structure is for the number of year flood or rains that we get, but as you know, as we've just seen with the storm Icy Isis or whatever it was called on 8/4, there's a lot of water that comes down at one time. And I just didn't want to see our cemeteries turning into a sort of a swamp or watching things float as they do in New Orleans when they get tough weather. Can you comment about anything going on that end, or is this really, or am I asking something that's really not in the plans that you've been looking at this time? And I'll be glad to talk to someone at a later date. But that's my concern.
I can certainly comment from the design point of view on the general stormwater design. There's a series of requirements you have to address with the stormwater design. One of them is a reduction in the peak rate of runoff. And in addition to that, you have the Act 167 kind of county watershed requirements as well that also require reduction in runoff. So that's being addressed in that portion of the property. The area he's referring to, I think everybody's probably aware, is the area towards Buckman, that portion of the property. So although the question doesn't directly relate to the flat bottom basins, although promoting infiltration will reduce the amount of overall runoff, the project's designed for the 100-year storm, which is what's required by ordinance, but you have pretty substantial reductions in runoff that you have to meet for the Act 167 requirements. So I don't anticipate that to be an issue, particularly in that area. Everything will be routed to there's 2 stormwater basins in that area, and ultimately discharge into the drainage system and the roadways there. So you should see less runoff going towards the cemetery area.
Well, I thank you for your answer. At some point, I'd like to talk to someone a little more depth about this stuff. I'm just one of the lead guys. When I saw the announcement about the Zoom meeting, I thought I'd attend. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Mr. Epstein, this is Tony Tallerita from the Township Engineer's Office. There is an extensive stormwater comment letter out there, and we are reviewing all aspects of stormwater management along with the Pennsylvania Department of Protection and Conservation District and the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. So there'll be more stormwater questions and reviews coming. This is but this specific issue is for the waivers, but there will be more review of the project to manage all the offsite runoff.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to step out of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, we have one more question. It's from Lee Salt, 3731 Manchester. A follow-up question for maintenance. Please clarify, when does the 18-month maintenance period start? After the retention ponds are completed or after the whole project is finished? Thank you. Lee, is there anything more you want to add?
Thank you, Greg. No, my question, I guess, goes to Solicitor Zader. You know, if they dig the retention ponds first for stormwater management, it's going to look completely different in terms of the amount of water you're going to get from runoff from where there's no buildings as compared to having buildings. So if the water is maintained with no buildings on, but it's not maintained with buildings on, when does the warranty start? That changes might have to be made.
Lee, it's actually a very excellent question. In small projects, it wouldn't be uncommon for the completion of inspection and the start of the maintenance period to be at the end of all the public improvements being inspected and put into the maintenance period together. In a project of this magnitude, where the horizon for development is, I don't remember what the developer specifically said, but from memory, I want to say it was somewhere north of 5 years in the 10-year range, it would be not uncommon to have the improvements inspected and put into a maintenance period in a phased approach, if you will. Now, ordinarily, that's a very important question. Here, as I mentioned a short time ago, because this is a project in which the stormwater facilities are going to be owned and maintained by the homeowners association, the 18-month maintenance period, well, I don't want to belittle it as being unimportant. It's much less important in this context because effectively the township is not on the hook going forward. It's really the association that remains on the hook in perpetuity. And so if the facility is not functioning as designed, then that would be something that would need to be corrected. Now, obviously, when I say not functioning as designed, this facility has been designed by Langen Engineering. It's been reviewed by staff and the township engineer at the Pidcock Company. So based upon acceptable engineering standards, by the time this review process is complete, the design will be firmed up. Now, there are certainly going to occasionally, hopefully not very often, be unusual circumstances that crop up where something doesn't work as designed. But the stormwater regulations and hence the designs that have come about in the last decade are exceedingly more challenging for developers to comply with, and the requirements are much more significant than they were before all of the BMP obligations came about. You heard reference during the dialogue earlier about these best management practices that the DEP has imposed. For other projects that are roughly older than, say, 10 years, maybe it was 12 years, but in that range, these BMP, best management practices requirements, did not even exist. The need for infiltration did not exist. Years ago, all stormwater basically went into a basin and then made its way into the township stormwater management system. And sometimes they would overflow, sometimes they wouldn't. Hopefully it didn't happen often, but it would happen. Today's design standards, and I'm not the best qualified to talk about it, it's really more of an engineering realm, but based on today's standards, much less stormwater leaves the site than would leave 15 years ago with a similar type of project, and that's because of the infiltration obligations. So did I answer your question, Lee?
Yes and no, I guess. So, I mean, so let me ask it this way. So let's say the stormwater is taken care of and done now. And 6 years from now, everything's developed, all the houses are built, everything's taken care of. Now we have drainage issues. It is then upon the developer to take care of those issues, not the township.
When you say drainage issues, I guess it would depend on what those issues are. If the stormwater management facilities are functioning as designed, functioning properly, and there's nothing that has been improperly maintained by the association, but just a freak of nature, if you will, there's not an absolute liability on anybody to take care of those kind of things that crop up. If there's a hurricane, for example, you don't design a stormwater system to withstand a hurricane. Well, we don't have hurricanes here in the Lehigh Valley, but what happens if we get one for some reason? So there are always theoretical exceptions to the rule. There's not an absolute liability, but there is an absolute obligation to maintain those facilities on the association, and that means that based on maintaining them, they should function as designed. And that would be a question to look at that point in time if there's a stormwater problem.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay, I have another one here. A Maria DeFavo Edwards of 1722 Saratoga Court. Now, she's not asking anything regarding this plan. She's making a statement that there's an existing flooding issue, and she's tried to contact K. Walbert LLC offices, and no one's returned her calls. So I think that's more a statement that's an issue that's not pertinent to this meeting.
Can I say something though? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm just trying to reach out to have this current problem resolved because our backyards are being flooded. I've put sandbags out there to try to divert the water coming down from the property above Country Crossing. So it's maybe not part of discussion for these plans, but I have gone to everyone I can at this point, and the problem still exists. I'm afraid of a sinkhole developing in my backyard. I'm reaching out for somebody to please help. I would really appreciate it if K. Walbert LLC, who I'm assuming is the owner of the property, can please reach out, come and see the problem, help to fix the problem so that our properties are not damaged any further, please.
Well, at least some representative heard you.
Yeah, we can certainly pass the message on if you could share your information with Greg at the township.
Okay.
All right, I will check into that. There are no more questions in the chat related to this waiver request. Anyone on the telephone interested in making a statement at this time? Hearing none. Mr. McNair?
Okay. So we've heard everything. So the waiver request is a waiver is requested to reduce minimum longitudinal slope across the basin floor from the minimum required 2% to 0% for all proposed basins. Do we have a motion to make that waiver request?
I move we grant the waiver for flat bottoms.
Do you hear a second?
Second.
Okay, that was Mr. Dunbar and Mr. Tote, right?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call vote or any? Yeah, roll call vote.
Okay, David Dunbar.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Aye.
Mike.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. We'll move along to number 7, and this is well, I'll let you talk about this, Jason, with some waivers requested for side slopes of basins, and you've seen the comments.
I have, yes. Yeah, so number 7 and number 8 are the other two stormwater related waiver requests, and they really tie to each other. Number 7 concerns allowing a 3-to-1 side slope within the stormwater basin areas. Number 8 is requesting a waiver to allow greater than a 30-inch maximum water depth. Both of those really tie to what I believe or were written in the ordinance originally with safety concerns, particularly in residential areas. And the ordinance actually has a provision that allows outside of residential areas for these to be greater than these numbers if you're providing fencing. So in this particular case, the stormwater basins will be owned and maintained by the homeowners association built by the developer and will be fenced. So the safety issue really goes away as it relates to these stormwater basins. But I know we should take each one individually. So the reason behind this more than anything else is we don't want to oversize, we don't want to use up open space area for stormwater facilities if we don't need to. Right now, the plan is designed so all the stormwater facilities are outside of any open space area. So they're not credited towards the open space. The T&D ordinance allows for stormwater to be within open space up to 60%. So we're trying to avoid expanding these basins, making them larger, and then eating up some open space or providing some stormwater facilities in that open space area. So but getting more specific, the number 7 is the waiver for the 4-to-1 for 3-to-1 side slopes of the stormwater basins versus 4-to-1. And as was discussed before, the geotechnical engineer noted that they don't have an objection to that for the majority of the basins. There are 2 basins, Basin 4, which is the one that's closest to the existing barn office building there. He had concerns with we were using a wall on one side of the stormwater facility. I understand if based on his recommendation, you're not comfortable with that Basin 4, and we can redesign that basin to avoid the need for the waiver. Similarly, he had a concern with Basin 6, which is the northwest corner of the property. And again, in that location, we can design around that to meet that requirement. So rather than jump ahead, I guess we'll stop there and say, we're specifically talking about number 7 in the letter. It's for 3-to-1 side slopes of the stormwater basins versus 4-to-1, and your geotechnical engineer did not have an objection, with the exception of Basin 4 and 6. Which, again, you can handle however you wish, but I'm willing to certainly meet the ordinance for those 2 particular basins if you so choose to approve the others.
Okay. Any questions from the commission?
Yes, this is Dave Wilson. Oh, Brian, you can.
I was just going to ask a question. If you have to design it around avoid this waiver, is it going to look substantially different? Is it going to be larger? Is it going to, I'm assuming you designed all these for a vision, and if we go too much off of that, is that going to impact?
Yes, to answer your question, both waivers are there to allow you to get additional volume and peak rate reduction out of the facilities we're proposing. The majority of that is really in the increase in allowable depth. The 3-to-1 versus 4-to-1 side slopes do gain you some additional volume in the stormwater facilities. But in particular, the 30-inch maximum depth that we had to hold to that, these facilities would grow dramatically. And again, we would end up putting those in open space areas. We could expand them in some of those areas, and I think we can meet the requirements. And we would have some, you know, we were trying to avoid any stormwater facilities within open space. So it would change substantially, particularly with waiver number 8. Both of them have an impact, and I think in both cases the issue, the reason for it being in the ordinance again is concern of safety, which makes some sense if you've got in a residential area and you've got small children and you have an unfenced basin that has a greater water depth. That might be a concern, but in this case, these are all going to be fenced, so I think that issue goes away.
Yeah, historically, we had an issue with a drowning in the Dorneyville area of Hamilton Boulevard. Very conscious about safety and those sorts of things. Thank you.
Of course.
All right, this is Dave Wilson. From an engineering aspect, I would say 3-to-1 is generally recognized as, you know, stable slopes. I don't have an issue with that. Basins 4 and 6, considering there's the retaining wall and it's on fill, I would say there needs to be engineering design and justification for the 3-to-1 slopes, just because it is on fill and we have the retaining walls there. So I would be comfortable with the other basins, just as the township geotech engineer said. I'm a professional engineer. 3-to-1 slopes are generally considered stable slopes. But basins 4 to 6, I would agree with the geotech engineer. We would need more information to justify the 3-to-1.
Okay, and so that is what Jason has proposed. So are you in agreement then with what he has proposed?
Yeah, I would say 3-to-1 is acceptable. That's pretty much the standard. Basins 4 to 6, though, I would not, unless they provided the engineering justification for that, because those are a bit more special circumstances because of the retaining wall and the fact that it's on fill.
Okay.
And my feeling is if we were to grant that, I would be okay contingent on our geotech engineer and then coming to an agreement of how these things should. That's just my gut feeling.
I agree with that. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go to outside to courtesy of the floor.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat box at this moment.
Okay.
Hearing that, shall we open it up to the phones?
Okay.
Okay, I have nothing on the phones. Monica Hodges has now asked a question in the chat box. She asked, how deep will the water be? And Monica, if you have any more to ask, now's the time.
Okay, seems like
And the next waiver kind of covers the depth.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're just discussing waiver number 7 at this time.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's don't hear anything on 7. I say let's go ahead with the waiver requested is not to increase the basin side slopes from the required 4:1 to 3:1. Now, I guess we would change that 3:1. I think we heard was okay. So not to increase from 3:1 to 3:1 and to 9 basins 4 and 6.
I just had one comment here for request number 7. The geotech states that the waiver request cannot be fully evaluated until all the comments have been adequately addressed. So how do we just pull that out of here if that's outstanding still?
Well, we would say that the waiver will need to be approved. The design will have to be approved by the geotech engineer. Add that in there. That satisfies.
No, I'm asking, since there's the geotech has noted that the waiver request cannot be fully evaluated until all of these comments have been adequately addressed. There's several concerns that they have. And as somebody said earlier, if they're going to have to change the size of some of these, it may change part of the plan. So a little bit concerned about that.
And I guess, Tony and Greg, you told my understanding was the clarification was that the geotech was okay with everything except basins 4 and 6, which Jason said he would redesign. Is that not true?
I believe the geotech stated that he would be okay with the waiver so long as it's contingent upon him approving the final plans, with the exception of basins 4 and 6, which he believed should not be granted the waiver because of those special conditions already listed. Is that correct, Tony?
Yes, that's what I got.
Okay, so let's make that the motion then. Do you have that in a form you can repeat, Greg?
Yes. Well, let me consider a motion to grant the waivers with the exception of basins 4 and 6. The waiver granting being subject to final approval, the design final approval by the geotech.
Okay. Does someone want to make that motion?
Would this be for all basins, Greg?
All basins that he requested with the exception of basins 4 and 6.
Because in his letter, he says we have no objection to the proposed grading for everything but 4 and 6.
Right. So yes, it would be a waiver to all of the basins with the exception of basins 4 and basin 6.
And that there would be a geotechnical approval of basins 4 and 6. That design.
Well, there'd be a geotechnical approval of all basins.
Okay.
The developer is proposing to redesign basins 4 and basin 6, the redesign of which will have to also be approved by the geotechnical engineer.
Okay.
I would like to include that the fencing would need to be provided too.
Well, wait, that's the next. That's
Well,
the next.
You can require it for this, I believe.
But would it make sense to approve areas except for basin 4 and 6, which obviously have more work to be done, and we could consider those at another time?
Yes.
I think that would be the cleanest way, really.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay. Hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Before you vote, I want to ask either Mr. Preston or Mr. Engelhardt, is this condition of the waiver acceptable to the developer, specifically the condition of geotech review and approval of the design and fencing around the basins, and also recognizing that basins 4 and 6 are not part of this grant of waiver, if that's the direction of the vote.
I don't think we have any objection to, but certainly not to the engineer approving the ultimate design. The only concern I have with fencing is really directly related to what happens with the next waiver. If we ultimately are limited to 30 inches of depth, it may not make sense to fence the stormwater facilities. So that's the only concern I have.
Okay, so we'll handle that. We can handle that in the next one.
Well, as far as I've seen, I think David Wilson did include that. David, would you like to withdraw that one and address it at the next waiver?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we'll withdraw the fencing requirement.
Great, thank you.
So what is
No
the depth
objection.
particular? Are we dealing with the depth of these basins now or not until the next one?
We're going to do it in
Just
the
side
next.
slope.
This is side slope, and we'll get the next one in line will be
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
fencing in depth.
Thank you.
It'd be appropriate for whomever made the motion in the second to withdraw that, have another motion.
Withdraw the motion.
Yep.
Okay, do we want to make a new motion then?
I make a motion to approve waiver number 7 with the exception of not approving basin 4 or 6.
And is that motion subject to, that the waiver is subject to the geotechnical engineer review and approval of the ultimate design?
Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Tope. Roll call vote.
Okay, here we go. David Dunbar,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
Bill McNair,
Aye.
Alan Tope,
Aye.
and David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. And now we're moving on to number 8.
So for number 8, there's a table that was included at the request of the geotechnical engineer that's should be within this letter that George has up. I could certainly bring it up too if you want to give me the screen. But I can review the depths because I know there's a question concerning depths. Should be after the grading one. The one after that, I should have it. Next page. There you go. That's gonna be a little difficult to read.
Well, that helps.
Look. Yeah. My eyes.
139.
There you go. Okay, so this is a comprehensive table that the geotechnical engineer had me put together, but if you want to focus in on the 10-year ponding depth and the amount over the 10-year, over 30 inches, you can see what the variance is. So they do vary. Not all of them exceed in the 10-year as far as the stormwater facilities go. So the maximum 10-year ponding depth was in basin number 3 at 52 inches. And then similarly, you can look at the 100-year as well, but it gives you each storm depth. So as was pointed out earlier, the geotechnical engineer had a concern over this waiver. The Tony did point out that, well, his concern was that he wasn't comfortable with recommending over anything more than 6 inches or more over the 30 inches, unless there's precedent already that allows for that, which it seems like there may have been based on Greg's conversation. So in this particular case, again, the fencing I think is critical because this is really about safety more than anything else. I don't think, and Tony or others can correct me if I'm wrong, if they feel there's an engineering issue here. But I don't believe there's an engineering issue. You know, we're going to, meaning the developer is going to own and maintain the stormwater facilities. It will be a safe condition because they will be fenced. And what allowing the additional depth allows us to meet our stormwater obligations without having to encroach into open space to make these facilities overly large. The other issue now is because there's stormwater BMPs and addressing those more difficult stormwater standards now, they require you to pond some water, right? In the old days, we would have those 2% slopes on the bottom of basins and it would drain immediately out and you wouldn't get any water quality benefit. Where now these stormwater BMPs, whether they're infiltration facilities that remove nitrogen and phosphorus before it gets groundwater recharge, or wetlands planted basins where you've also got similarly water quality benefits, but it takes time for those facilities to drain. And while it's draining, sediment is settling out, pollutants are being removed. That's why you design them the way you do now. So just as long as that's clear, you know, if there's a level of comfort with the depths that are proposed, again, at first I would offer the fencing being the solution to that. But, you know, if there was some level of comfort with a certain depth over that 30 inches that you could settle on, that would be something we could review as well. So.
Any comments? Monica Hodges, this table answers your question, I believe, which was what are the depths? You can see them here. I'm okay with this to go ahead with this understanding. Are there any other comments?
I would say some of these basins look to get up to about 5 feet plus. Are there going to be maintenance access ways to the bottom of the basin?
Yes, yeah. We'll grade out an access way into the basin. I mean, I don't expect them to be heavily, you know, again, the old stormwater basins you had to mow pretty regularly. These aren't going to require that level of maintenance, but they'll certainly require maintenance, and we'll have access for maintenance as well, and a grade to support that.
You know, the fence addresses the safety issue.
That was my biggest concern, was safety and the fencing. I'm good.
Does the fencing address that, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I'm good.
How about you, Diane?
Well, for me personally, fencing in and of itself doesn't necessarily give us the answer. I think, I believe the developer mentioned, you know, it's going to impact some open space. I think that there could be a better way to configure these so we don't have to have numbers quite so high. I mean, we just witnessed the power of a storm just a couple weeks ago. We've got some residents downhill from this development who suffered a great deal of damage from stormwater runoff. And given the comments from the engineer that their office does not find these to be acceptable, I don't feel that safety necessarily has been met just by a fence. We're talking about more than just that here. We're talking about stormwater, and it's an important issue that we need to look at, and I just don't think that this one meets what we're looking for.
And so you would prefer it to be over a wider area?
Reconfigured to, yes, to be consistent with our ordinances and approved by our engineer who reviewed this plan.
Now, it makes a difference which storm, and I don't know that the that Chris Taylor, I mean, he did say he had a depth, but he didn't say what storm it was, I don't think.
No, I don't think he did.
So, I mean, you can look at what the 10-year storm is. There are going to be, storms. The 100-year storm is a major event.
I think we just had one, Bill, just a couple
Right.
weeks ago.
And
it
this
seems
one
like
would handle it with these depths. And yes, they're big depths, but it's not necessarily, I mean, it's designed to handle them. It has to be designed to take those into an account. And yes, there are it's either going to be a lot of area or depth. It's not going to go away.
A question I have for Jason, these 10-year ponding depths, for what amount of time is it at that 10-year ponding depth? So how fast does that depth dewater?
I would, that's a good question, and I'd have to look at each one individually. There's an ordinance requirement that it has to dewater within a specific time frame. And we also aren't taking any credit with this analysis for the infiltration that you'll see here. So it'll actually dewater faster than our initial calculations show. So this is not taking credit for infiltration. We're assuming that that's not happening for this.
So it's not a permanent or a very, well, I guess I'll ask the question, is it a long extended period where that water is ponded, or does it dewater within a day, or that 10 year storm? Just so we have a point of reference of how long it will be that deep.
I'm hesitant to misspeak and give you the wrong information. It meets the ordinance. I don't know that it necessarily dewaters in a day, but that's not taking credit for the infiltration that'll be happening. That probably will allow it to dewater within a day. But it depends on the storm, and I'd have to look at the specific hydrographs in each case.
Just to clarify, you said that it does meet the ordinance?
For the dewatering time, yes.
Dewatering time.
Yeah, that was the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't really a discussion of, I mean, you actually probably get more storage volume and better storm attenuation with the design as it proposed, rather than over a more expansive area. What I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, I think the current concern about the safety, number one is, providing fencing, but also if you could maybe demonstrate that 10-year storm does not pond for 1 week, maybe it's a day or two, and then it lowers. Is there, there's the concern about the safety of that ponded depth.
You could certainly add a condition that we had to provide dewatering time calculations that needed to be acceptable to your engineer. That's something that made sense.
Okay.
I have a slight question more out of curiosity than anything else. We keep talking about 10-year storms and 100-year storms. What's the comparable description of the storm of August 4th? Is that 200 years? Is it 90 years? What was it?
Maybe I'll take that one.
Okay, Tony.
You have rainfall gauges anywhere from 6 to in the 7+ inches. That rainfall is consistent between a 50 and a 100-year storms. The biggest issue I think you had with the recent event was, if you go back from the 4th, if you go back a few days, was a Sunday morning storm that dropped about 3 inches of rain on the valley. So you have a lot of moisture, the streams are already running high, and then all of the grass area, if you will, was saturated. So you talk rainfall and then you talk runoff. So most of that rainfall that fell during the tropical storm went right down into runoff into the creeks. So you had a substantial effect from the amount of rain we got. So the effect on the stream gauges peaked somewhere very close to a 100-year storm. Your rainfall was probably 50 to 100. So very substantial storm. I think the last time, I'm not mistaken, that you got that much rain was I think about 8 years ago. I think it's the last time you got rainfall in the 7-inch range.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board, from the planning commission? Okay, we'll move on to the community question.
Okay, I've got a few questions here. Monica Hodges starts with her first question, which is what is the depth? She follows up with a statement: please do not approve the increased depth, significant safety issues, even with a fence. Thank you. Monica, do you want to add to that?
No, not now. Thank you very much for letting me ask my question.
Okay.
Okay. Next one is Robert Hodges, who has a question.
Hi, yeah, Robert Hodges, 1707 Penn's Crossing. So my understanding for the purpose of this waiver would be to make these basins deeper, allow more water so that they allow for more open space. Is that correct? So that they can be smaller and allow for more open space?
Yes, essentially that's the primary reason. They don't have to get larger to use open space.
Okay, so I see depths here of 52 inches, 53 inches, 65 inches. This is 4 to 5 feet of water, even deeper in some cases. I don't know how tall kids are these days, but I would assume there's plenty of 10, 11, 12-year-olds who are shorter than that could very easily climb any fence you put up and get into these areas and find themselves in a very dangerous situation with steeper slopes now that we've approved that, and much deeper water. So first of all, I see this as an extreme safety issue, and the other way to minimize the loss of open space would to decrease the density of the development itself. If you're really that interested in maximizing open space, put up fewer residences. And finally, last question for the board, along the same lines. If we approve this, in what way does this increase the safety of this development, and how does this help South Whitehall? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. The question there, I mean, you did quote the numbers. That's for the 100-year ponding, and there will be, some time that this will take to infiltrate, and that's.
Yeah, the stormwater basins will drain both through means of infiltration and also through an outlet control structure. So the combination of the two will drain the basins.
Mhm.
And I just want to point out too that your ordinance does have a provision really for this. It says fencing shall be required around detention basins in the following cases where the depth of water for the 10-year storm or greater is greater than 30 inches. So it had envisioned this situation.
If I can ask a follow-up, then if that's the case, then why are we asking for a waiver if it's already accounted for?
We were trying to be complete. There's prior to that, it talks about basins in residential areas, and she'll have the depths less than 30 inches. So it's a little unclear to me. So just to try to address both, I don't know if they're mutually exclusive or not. So that's why we included it. So it says residential areas less than 30 inches, and then in the next section talks about providing fencing when you do have greater than 30 inches, and is silent when it compares residential or non-residential areas.
Okay.
Okay. Next one.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Lee Solt, 3731 Manchester Road. He asked, do these figures take into account the water table when it is completely saturated? Lee, anything you want to add? Do it now.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Greg. No, I believe the comment was made that when was our last, this was between an 80 and 100-year storm a couple weeks ago, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the comment also was made, but there are no hurricanes. Well, we had Hurricane Agnes. We had Floyd come through here, which I had significant flooding through. And so my question is when we get rain events that have, like you said, we had saturation days before this, are these tables configured completely saturated, or what is the table based off of?
So the stormwater analysis and the geotechnical investigation has to consider seasonal high groundwater levels. So the table is just based on a routing of stormwater basins, but the overall design has to consider seasonal high groundwater levels.
Okay, is that just general, or I don't want to, but we are in Spring House. So the question is that just a general national thing, or is that specifically to the area that what we're discussing?
No, it's based on an investigation of the site.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
But my point is, so is this the worst? Is this summary? Is this with 100? The table groundwater is completely saturated, and now this is what happens on top of this.
This is a table that talks about the depth of water in the stormwater basins when that large storm comes and drains to the basin. The area that drains to that stormwater basin, how high does the water pond, and then begin to drain out? What's the maximum height of ponds in a 10-year storm or a 100-year storm? It'll all be contained within the basin, because in addition to the ponding height, you've got freeboard, additional height above that to an emergency spillway. So they can actually store more than what's in here. But these are the elevations it gets to during those storm events.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
And it also takes into account that there's no infiltration. These are just raw numbers. So
right.
So hopefully if there was a storm on Sunday, a lot of that will have been infiltrated. So this would be a 50 or 100-year storm on top of that already infiltrated capacity is how I read it.
That's correct. This is just looking at the orifices in the outlet control structure. It doesn't take we don't take credit for the additional infiltration we're getting into the soil in the basin. So it would drain out faster.
Okay, so the
Okay.
next question is Robert Hodges asked, so the last 100-year storm was 8 years ago?
I believe that was directed at me. Excuse me, 8 years was 10 years. So there were 5 events in the last 2005, 1999, 1985, and 2010 that were over 5.5 inches of rain. Again, there's a lot that goes into it. I don't mean to be rude, but there's a lot that goes into it in terms of how much runoff you get, if it's extremely dry conditions, if it's wet conditions, and all those factor into how much rainfall you actually feel. So I don't want to comment exactly if that was a 100-year storm. Each one of those rainfalls would take research, but those are I believe the top 5 in the valley.
All right, and then we have one more question from Robert Hodges. I repeat my question, how would allowing this waiver increase safety and help South Whitehall rather than help the developer?
Again, if you'd like me to try to answer it, I'd rather not enlarge the stormwater facilities and place them within open space on the project. I think that the project is better served, the township is better served with more open green space, whether it's passive or otherwise. I think we can meet our standards for open space for the project but if we made these shallower. I think this is a better stormwater design, provides better peak rate attenuation as well as a better open space design.
I just want to again draw our attention back to the LVPC review letter regarding Act 167. As we're talking about drainage, the conclusion of the reviewing agency was that the drainage plan has been found to be inconsistent. So they're asking for further information, stating that roadway improvements associated with the project need to be factored into the analysis. It seems to me, having read this drainage review, that there's obviously other data that is needed to review to bring us to some clarity on this issue. And given the safety concerns and what we're asking for here, it would be my recommendation at this point that this should be tabled until that information can be gathered and presented to this board.
I think it would be good to know how long those 10-year ponding depths, how fast or how slow that the waters, that would be helpful to make a decision.
Okay, so it seems like for this one, there's questions about, the time that these levels occur, and also the other issues brought up by the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Right now, I would say, do we want to? Well, we could either vote on this now or just say that we need more time. What does the Planning Commission want to do there? You want to wait till we're given?
I would agree to.
More information.
I would agree.
I'm sorry. What did you say, Alan?
More information.
Okay.
Can I just offer one comment on the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission letter? So again, there's kind of 2 points there. One is the roadway improvements were considered in the stormwater management design. So that is included. I just need to clarify that with them. Their letters, the initial review for every Act 167 plan review that you receive from them has that same language included with it. So that's not unusual here. And I can't work on the other, I just want to be clear, I can't work on anything related to the project as far as addressing the other comments or the Act 167 letter until this issue is resolved. So I just want you to understand that if we table it, that will, or if you decide to do that, and I understand if you're looking for how long it takes to drain out the 10-year storm volume, we can work through that and provide you that information. But in effect, if you do table it, it will be in a holding pattern until that gets discussed again or acted on.
So are you stating then that the comment that I read from this letter that said roadway improvements associated with the project need to be factored into the site, therefore the drainage plan has been found to be inconsistent, that's in all of their letters as some kind of a form letter, that's not unique to this particular development?
No, the language that they say about inconsistency, that's the standard you get when along with their comments. Just like your township engineer offers comments when you file a plan, that's the standard language they use. The roadway improvement information, I think they just have a misunderstanding there that I need to clarify for them, because the roadway improvements were included in the stormwater management design. So, part of my job is to clarify their questions, and that's what I need to do, and their job is to review the application. So I'm sure I'll have to make modifications to address some of their comments, just like I usually do, and just like I'll have to do for your engineer. So all I'm really saying at this point is that without resolution on this, I won't be able to modify the stormwater design and address any of the comments until we come to some resolution on this issue. I just want to make that clear.
Sure, and I just wanted to also, for the benefit of the public, and I know the board's probably aware, you've read this as well, this plan has not had a full review by the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. It is scheduled for tomorrow with their committee, and then on Thursday with their full board. So, personally, the information we've been given by the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission has been not what our typical review letter would contain. And the fact that there are some pretty strong statements in this Act 167 letter that state that they are looking for more information, I certainly would move to table this at this point until we have the information to move forward.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it. I'd like to know how fast that 10-year ponding depth dewaters. In terms of safety, if it's there for a week, that's not a good situation. If it gets lower than that 30 inches within a day or so, that seems to be more reasonable. But I'd like to get more information on that.
Okay. Any other comments?
I have a question. I don't know if it's the appropriate time, but I was going to ask, have you reached out to the LVPC Director of Environmental Planning? This letter is about 2 business weeks old. So have you engaged them with what information the Reach needs and all that, or not yet? I know we're in a COVID world. It's all strange, but just asking.
If you're asking me that question, I actually received this letter just about 3 days ago. I wasn't actually copied on the original submission of that, but it's fairly common practice, meaning that there's a planning letter that has a great deal of planning information and an Act 167 review, and that Act 167 review addressing their comments goes in conjunction with addressing your engineer's comments, in this case both Hanover and Pidcock, as well as the Conservation District's comments. So they'll all move in conjunction. So there's nothing particularly unusual about the comments here, other than this is a large project and there's a number of sub-area drainage areas that we're working through, but we'll work through all these comments together. And it'll take a number of months to address them to a point where we get a consistency letter out of Lehigh Valley Planning Commission that we're consistent with the Act 167 plan. So that's not at all unusual. But no, I haven't spoken to them specifically about the drainage plan review yet. But it'll work in conjunction with everyone else.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to table this and a second. You want to take a
Call for the vote?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call vote. David Dunbar,
Aye.
Ryan Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
Bill McNair,
Aye.
Alan Tope,
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion to table passes unanimously, 6-0.
Okay, let's move on to the next one then. I'm going to get to, which one is that now? Number, we really are address that. That's with the, mainly with the fence, and we got into the depth of water with the fence. So now we're on to number 1.
Right, and for these plan-related items, I don't know if you want me to bring up a plan on your screen. It might be easier for folks to, we can kind of remote.
Okay, I say let's read the waiver request first, and then go to the plan. And we're this waivers requested from the. Do you want to?
Sure, I can summarize. This is the waiver request for the proposed right-in, right-out driveway along Walbert. Because it's an arterial road, the required offset from the intersection is 800 feet. The request is for 600. Excuse me, I don't find the right.
That might be 580 feet I have from the last time.
My plan go. Okay, sorry, I'm getting my best to share here. Sorry, I have too many pieces of paper in front of me. So it's 680 feet from Walbert and Cedar Crest. Let's see, that's still trying to regenerate here. So this is the right-in, right-out intersection. You know, the history again was at one point we had it closer to Cedar Crest. We've kind of settled on this location as being the best location for this right-in, right-out driveway. We've done some work to prevent lefts in, which was a concern in previous discussions. You know, your engineer talked a little bit about site distance here. Rob Hoffman's, who is our traffic engineer, I think is available as well, and he at our last meeting reviewed this in a little more detail. Got too many exhibits open here, so I'm going to try to find the right one. Here we go. So this shows a little more detail. Rob, are you on?
I am, yes.
Okay. Do you want to re-review this driveway and how it functions?
Sure. So with respect to the driveway, it is a right-in, right-out configuration with a concrete median, and it's an extended median. And that design with that extended median was based on PennDOT's input. They provided feedback with respect to, you know, really trying to prohibit anyone from making a left in. There's some dimensions on the bottom of that plan that you can see, the 360 feet. That would be the length of what I would call the dedicated left turn lane for the left turn at the intersection to head south onto Cedar Crest Boulevard. But then as you can see beyond that, it continues as a center two-way left turn pattern, if you will. You know, again, based on feedback from PennDOT as far as how they wanted to see the striping in that, which then ultimately transitions into a left turn lane at the next adjacent intersection. So the 360 feet, that's the what I'll call the maximum worst case queue that you would see. So you can see if you're coming out of the driveway, that's a stop condition. So the motorist has to come out, they come to a complete stop, and then they merge into the westbound through lane on Walworth Avenue, and then continue with the intersection and make a determination on whether they want to go straight through to the west, if they want to make a right to go north on Cedar Crest, or if they want to get into that left turn lane and make a left to go south on Cedar Crest. So that's in essence how that intersection operates. There's no sight distance issues there. All the sight distance requirements are met. Again, that access has received approval from PennDOT. They're on board with that access, and they looked at that as part of the overall traffic study that was done. And it's our opinion that access helps internally in that development, creates a safer traffic flow situation by allowing motorists that may want to be destined to that commercial core area, I'll call it, on the corner, to not have to traverse all the way through the site, through the parking area, resulting in unnecessary conflicts with other motorists and pedestrians throughout that area. If they were to use the driveway further to the east and have to traverse all the way through. So it's just from a traffic planning and transportation planning perspective, it makes sense. It creates a safer situation, creates better traffic flow.
I just want to clarify one thing to be sure. The dimensions there, 360 and 220, make it a 580-foot distance from the corner, from the Cedar Crest.
That's correct. Now, I think where you're going with that is with respect to the waiver request, and the waiver request is a center line to center line request from intersection center line to center line.
And is that 680? Is that another 100 feet?
It is, yes.
Yeah, approximately, yes. I don't have a dimension on there, but yeah, that's approximately correct.
Okay. All right. And PennDOT did approve this, is what you said also?
That's correct. That's
okay.
Correct.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission?
I have one. What was the feedback you got from the Public Safety Committee on this?
I'm trying to recall if we received
Yeah, I don't
public
have
safety.
that letter in front of me if we did get feedback on that.
I don't believe it was discussed in the last meeting. It may have been discussed in the original meeting, though.
Well, their letter dated July 7th said it was reviewed the night before, so I'm guessing that's July 6th. And that Jason Engelhardt Langen presented to the commission and addressed the comments made by the commission at the May 4th meeting.
That's correct. I don't believe we received any specific feedback that night of that meeting on this access. But the original meeting concerning the project, we weren't in attendance of. So it may have been discussed at that point.
Greg, do you have any other information?
I just have the letter that was included in the packet, the July 7th email from John France.
What page is that?
Page 93 of the packet. 93 of the packet.
It looks like on page 94, item letter I.
Yes, correct.
I believe that's dealt with there.
Okay.
Did we want to read that for the record?
Go ahead.
You would like me to? Oh, okay. From the Public Safety Commission, the distance non-compliant right turn in, right turn out on Walworth Avenue between Office Center Road and North Cedar Crest Boulevard should be revised to be distance compliant or eliminated.
There is more there, talking about Commissioner Wall. Saying that
Right.
this,
He made some comments that had previously been identified by the Planning Commission with the same concerns by the Public Safety Commission. Proposed access has been reconfigured to provide right in, right out designation to eliminate vehicles making unauthorized turns. PennDOT has approved the traffic study with configuration. The traffic engineer will present to the Planning Commission.
okay.
So we do have the PennDOT letter dated 2/21/20. Has there been a revision to this letter since that date?
That's a final letter.
That's the final letter.
That's the final letter.
If you can help me, where in this letter did they say that that was an approved driveway?
I can do that. So it would be on the 6th page, or I'm sorry, the 5th page of that. About the bot 2/3 of the way down. It says access type improvements. And their second point there, one right in, right out driveway to Walworth, they say Road Avenue.
So they're asking for these improvements, but it still
They're
needs to.
saying this is an approved. The top of that page is saying the traffic study, which contains all of these improvements and was based on all of these improvements, and the analysis were based on this. That traffic study is approved. And the approval, they're listing, these are the below that it gets into, these are the improvements, access type improvements, then they'll go through each of the intersections, what all the intersection improvements are. That's the standard PennDOT approval letter.
So can we ask the engineer, Tony, if you could help with this? Because I know we still need to get another process with the highway occupancy permit. And we're talking about the difference between a review letter and an actual improvement. This is still subject to South Whitehall Township ordinances. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, this is the approval letter from PennDOT for the TIS. That is what determines all the movements along with all the uses on site. They have submitted this week, and we received the plan set for the HOP. That gives you it's a highway occupancy permit, so that gives you the access of this driveway onto a state road, or any driveways onto a state road. This is being included. So they are going through the HOP process, which will give you the access. So the difference that I would say between the two letters are, PennDOT looks at, I believe, a sketch just like this, or it may have been this sketch that was included in the TIS report, as this is about where the driveway is going to go. It's a feasible location for that driveway. Submit an HOP plan set, which does a lot more than this. It shows grades, signage, a host of things, utilities. And at that point, you will get what I'll call as a second approval letter, or you will get your HOP permit, highway occupancy permit, which allows you to build and then begin to use the driveway. So that's kind of the difference between, that's where they are right now in the process.
That's correct.
So the theory of access to the road is what was approved, not necessarily where it was located on the road.
Yeah, as I said, I believe a sketch just like this, or this sketch, I think it was a little different, was included. That was approved as if that there was, that's about where the driveway would be. There's not a dimensional review. There's much more review, you know, grades, how steep the driveway is, how the signage works, how the sight distance works. All that comes in the HOP permit review.
That's correct. As part of the traffic study submission, there were, given the scale of the improvements that are being done in conjunction with this project, there were what I call conceptual roadway improvement plans that were submitted to PennDOT, and that was part of their review and approval of the traffic study, which did get into specifics as far as like where this driveway is located.
So I guess my question I have is, generally speaking, based on the density and intensity of a development of this size, PennDOT looked at it and said, generally speaking, it's acceptable, but there's a lot more detailing and specifics that would need to be looked out. Is that a accurate statement, I guess, for Tony? And
yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think I'm sorry. I think every TIS, between TIS and HOP, you have this gap in here. So every time you get a TIS approval, it usually doesn't give you access to the roads. It's just a TIS approval, you know, whether it be a single use or a multitude of uses. You kind of have this intermediate ground, and that's where they are right now. They still needed the HOP, just as most developments, you know, on a state road would need that. So that's where they currently stand.
Does the placement of
the traffic study it's the initial step. It's the initial planning step that you need to go through with PennDOT, and it lays the groundwork for moving forward for what the ultimate improvements that PennDOT is going to require. It sets the groundwork for that, and it outlines that. And that's what this letter is confirming, is that they have reviewed the traffic study. They've looked at the planning aspect. They've looked at the traffic flow, which takes into consideration the uses on the site, the access, how many access locations, where the access is, the configuration of the access, in this case, like a right in, right out configuration versus a full access. And they've gone through all that, and they're at the point where they've approved that. So now we move into the HOP design plan phase, and as Tony said, that's where you get into the specifics, what I'll call the construction specifics. That, as Tony said, the grading and the signing and the striping, during the signals, the traffic signal timing, those types of things. Those are the details that get hammered out in that part. It's not, PennDOT's approved these improvements. They've approved the access where it is. It's not going to go away. It's not going to change in their mind. They're set on that. They're comfortable with that.
And then with that being said, this driveway location is still contingent upon the township allowing for the driveway location, regardless of what PennDOT says. Is that correct? I believe it is.
It is.
Yeah, I believe that's correct, because they're requesting a waiver through the township. It's not a PennDOT. The offset is not a PennDOT requirement. It's a township requirement.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think it provides more access and prevents a bottleneck at, I guess it's road F. But
Yeah, it does provide more access. So we've gotten comments from the Planning Commission. Are there any comments from the community? I don't see any. Greg, do you?
I'm not seeing any in the comment box. Shall we open it up to the callers? Anyone on a phone want to make a comment at this time? Hearing nothing, I'm still seeing nothing in the chat box.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion on this, and we may not all agree on this, but let's see where the Planning Commission stands. Motion to and it's for this variance. I don't know if we can go. This one is number 1.
I'll make that motion, but I have a question.
Okay.
My question is what was different in the TIS, traffic impact study, and the Walbert Avenue improvement plans included in our packet dated July 16th when the letter from PennDOT was dated February 21st? If there was any plans in there, or if it was just conceptual. And part 2 is, did they do an analysis of the impact study without this access, or was it just with the access? Those are my 2 questions.
So when can I clarify, when you, the second question, when you said they, was that directed towards me and my firm, or was that directed towards PennDOT? Or both?
Probably both. I don't.
Okay. So we internally, yes, we've looked at it. It's, you know, the traffic would shift over to, obviously, the easternmost Walbert driveway is what you do. So you've not. Does that intersection work? Absolutely. That's a high volume driveway intersection. It could certainly handle the traffic. Again, I think it comes back to, from a planning perspective, what makes the most sense from a traffic flow. And the addition of this driveway, in my opinion, accomplishes that. Did PennDOT look at it? No, they didn't need to. They were okay with this. They agreed that they thought this made sense, you know, to be able to help dilute some of that traffic and create better traffic flow. So they didn't have to look at it. But you know, if it were to have to go over there, all the traffic, that intersection could certainly accommodate the additional traffic.
One comment I want to make when we talk about access to the development and movements, part of the traffic study report that we were just given today, the estimate of new trips for this development once all of the phases are built is 10,064 trips. So when we talk about stacking and how many cars are there going to be right there on Walbert Avenue, you know, those are the numbers that they're in my head. And we've got a recommendation from the Public Safety Commission asking for it to be revised to be distance compliant. And I do have another question. This driveway that is proposed and its proximity to the Office Center Road a little bit further down Walbert, is that ordinance compliant as well?
Are you talking about the driveway, the proposed driveway opposite Office Center Drive?
I'm talking about this one in conjunction to the one just a little bit further down Walbert that'll be at Office Center, yes.
So the distance between the right in, right out in the Office Center driveway?
Yes.
That's your question.
How many feet is that from the Office Center Road?
Jason, do you happen to know or have?
Yeah, it's roughly 515, 520 feet. So the waiver request has always been essentially for the placement of this driveway between the intersection of Cedar Crest and Walbert and Office Center Drive. So yeah, right, you're right. It wouldn't be, if we had 800 feet on either side, we could we would be compliant. Wherever we place this, we're not going to be compliant with this driveway from our site driveway and the intersection. That's the gist of the waiver.
So it's almost a two-sided waiver then, because you're not compliant with the intersection at Cedar Crest nor with the intersection at Office Center.
That's correct.
Right.
And then there's also, based on our review letter from our engineer, I believe one of the access points up at Huckleberry is also part of this waiver request. So the one waiver request will be for both.
No, there's a separate waiver request for that we're discussing as a separate item, but this is standalone.
So this one's separate, Diane.
Okay, so our review letter from the engineer states that Road I connection to Huckleberry is also a deficiency.
That's a separate. We're going to get to that.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Sometime after this one.
Let me ask you this: Can we ask your engineer to opine on operationally whether he thinks there's an issue with this right in, right out driveway?
Yes.
As we've said in the past, the two items that we've usually commented on are site distance and stacking. So site distance usually is included in the HOP plans. We received the HOP plans, I believe, last Thursday afternoon. We started looking through them. I don't know if we could put our finger right on the actual site distance, but Walford is very straight, very flat. So, eventually we'll see that calculation. I don't know if it was specifically included. It'll eventually be included, but the traffic engineer has said that this driveway will meet site distance. So that means the cars will be able to see you, point out, and you'll be able to see the cars. The second item that we have comment on is the queuing. So how many cars are going to get stacked up from the stoplight in your worst case condition, I believe is somewhere 15 to 20 years out when the entire development's built. There'll be a line of cars. I believe I have that number right here. Excuse me 1 second. I believe it's 590 feet worth of vehicles. So this intersection is away from that stacking, meaning that as a car comes up to this, when there's a red light, all the cars are stacked up. The car will be able to enter Walford Avenue. So those are the two items that we usually discuss whenever there's a driveway onto a state road. We let PennDOT, review it in the TIS, but we always take note of the stacking and site distance.
Thank you.
I actually have concern if it's not in there, will that, if that access isn't provided, is it going to make the traffic congestion worse? If it's not provided,
No,
it's going to push everything.
No, it as far as on Walford Avenue, no, it's because the movements, like I said, they would use the full access drive, so it's not going to create a congestion situation on the surrounding roadway network. Really, this is the core of this is from a planning and a traffic flow perspective. This makes the most sense to help dilute the traffic. That's never a bad thing to be able to do that, to help to dilute traffic. Give the motorists other opportunities. This driveway is not a function of, helping or hurting something on Walford Avenue. That's really not what it's about. It's a right in, right out movement. It's a non-conflicting movement. So from that perspective, there would not be a problem. Those same movements would be made. They'd just be shifted, whatever it is, 600 feet to the east.
But what it does do for the site is reduce the amount of conflicts between automobiles and pedestrians, as Rob pointed out before. And it also provides a marketability benefit, meaning you're more likely, you're better off leasing some of these properties if you've got better access and closer access to get in and out, and keeping them done leased.
Okay. All right. Brian, are you still ready to make the motion? Did you get your questions answered?
I believe there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, we've got 2 questions in the chat box now. Actually,
I
several
will
now.
withdraw. I'll withdraw my motion to get the public's comments.
All right, we've got Judy Piovasan, 1005 Bryant Street. Her question is, won't the bottleneck occur upon leaving the site onto Walbert Avenue? And Judy, if you want to add more to that, now's the time.
Nope, I'm fine. That's the only question I have. I can see that people leaving the site wanting to go to the light and head south on Cedar Crest. I can see them blocking Walbert so that people going west on Walbert won't be able to head north on Cedar Crest because there's too many vehicles. In other words, it's the distance is too short between the light and the exit of the site. Thank you. That's it.
So I can respond to that. That's actually not the case. Somebody that wants to go to that signal and make a left to head south on Cedar Crest Boulevard, as I said earlier, that turn lane it's designed as 360 feet. That queue is the worst case queue for that left turn movement is projected to be 350 feet. So that leaves, over 225 feet. Basically, the motorist comes out, they're at a stop condition. They come out when they have the gap, they come out into the traffic flow, they head west for over 200 feet, then move over into the left turn lane to make the movement to head south on Cedar Crest.
Okay, next question is from Cindy Smith. She asks, is that the only exit onto Walbert Avenue? And Cindy, if you want to add more, now's the time.
Thank you. I'm just curious, with a development that size, is there only one exit through 800 and some homes onto Walbert Avenue?
No, there's an additional access. Jason's pulling up the plan now. There's going to be an additional full access signalized driveway onto Walbert as well, to the east.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And last but not least, Lee Salt, 3731 Manchester Road, has a comment. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. I guess my comment is, we have rules and regulations that are set forth, written for a reason. And now we're moving to change those and accept their waiver for this intersection. We've now accepted the waiver previously at Citronia and Broadway, which is not a good situation. I always want to hear us get ahead of the curve in terms of traffic. Seems like we're getting behind the curve, but when are we ever going to stick to the rules and regulations that are set forth by the township and public safety for these things? That's my only comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I think one answer is that the rules do not apply to every unique situation on every road in every part of the township, and that's why the waiver process is available. That's the whole reason for this, for the waiver process. The planning commission hears them, and then the board of commissioners hears them.
Yeah, I would add that this topic came up a year ago, I guess, last fall. I remember former planning commissioner Bilecki had floated the idea of possibly a ring road in there so that there would be better circulation through the commercial area here in this project, and then funnel the traffic out through the signalized road at Office Center Road so that there would be a controlled signal as opposed to people just going in and out where there's a stop sign. And there's certainly some good discussion over that. And at that time, the waiver for this western entrance, which does not comply with our ordinances, was not approved.
I would just like to say that planning is not always cookie cutter. We have a saldo, and the intent, the goal is to strive to meet the saldo. It should be met. There are unique situations where that are encountered where waivers are needed. In my opinion, this right in and right out driveway alleviates traffic congestion within the development and allows people to leave the site without having to go to that full left in, left out, driveway at Office Center Road. I think it, in terms of planning, it provides a bit more flexibility, and it's only right in and right out, so it does not allow for the left turns to cross traffic. That's just my 2 cents.
I agree. I agree. It's a better than left out, definitely. I'm just, I think every time that we set a waiver for something, we're setting a precedence not to abide by the rules that we've had in the past. That's all.
Okay, and that's true. That's what the waiver process is all about, where it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I would say this is unique specifically to this situation. Every land development project is going to have a different property size, different site features. Every land development project is unique in its own right, in my opinion.
Also, I think this corner of the development is really a public space. It isn't just for the residents of the development. There'll be a lot of people who don't live in the development who'll be going in and out of this place because of those commercial properties. And it appears that the roadway will enhance that traffic movement in there and maybe the congestion in there.
Okay, David, would you be willing to make a motion?
Was there, I would be willing, but is there one already made?
No.
Brian withdrew it.
So would you be willing to make a motion? We have a bunch more things to do. We have discussed this for a while now. I think it would be useful to find out what people think, and it either will go or won't.
All right, then I move to grant the waiver.
Okay. Greg, do you have enough from that to, do we have a second? I'll second it.
Yeah, this one's pretty specific. I don't see any conditions to this. It's either grant or not grant. So grant's the first motion up.
Okay. I guess we'll roll call.
Roll call vote. Here we go. Dave Dunbar.
Aye.
Brian Hyde.
No.
No. Diane Kelly.
No.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope,
Aye.
Dave Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay. Moving right along. Number 12, now we're moving up to, oh no, this one's, read this. Can we put number, do you want to, number 12 is the, near the one near the Jarris office, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So I brought up an exhibit we discussed at the last meeting concerning this request. So this is concerning the existing barn, the Jarris office building that's remaining. We had requested a waiver when this was written for there should be a 150-foot offset from the intersection to the entrance to the small parking lot for that facility that we're proposing. We had discussed this at the last meeting. I discussed with the township engineer, and he had made a suggestion to potentially consider providing that access off of the cul-de-sac road, which still requires a waiver, but increases that separation distance from on the order of 70 feet when I was measuring it north-south to the driveway to 109 feet into this parking lot area. So the necessity of this waiver is partly about saving the building and the site constraints that are here, providing some adequate parking. And I think it was a good suggestion to move the access point off the cul-de-sac because it's not going to, you really only have the 4 units that are proposed there. There's not conflicting movements between anyone here. So that the waiver request that's written in the waiver request letter had asked for the driveway as is shown in black on this plan. But we're happy to amend that to the 109 foot coming off of the cul-de-sac portion of Road H, which is what's illustrated on this plan.
Okay. Any questions from the Planning Commission? No? Okay. Do we have anything on the chat?
I'm seeing nothing in the chat box at this point. Shall we open it up to the phone callers? If there's any phone callers out there with comments or questions, please speak now.
Okay, no.
Still no questions in the chat box.
Okay. Do we want to make a motion then? And Jason, now this is, does this one read differently now?
It would really be subject to your motion. Again, the request had a roughly 70, I don't have it in front of me, but roughly 70 feet to the access to the driveway for the parking lot. And again, we're amenable to moving it to the Road H cul-de-sac. So you would have, if that's what you prefer, then we'd have to amend it. Then you
Let's
just
say
have to
that's
put
what we
it
would
in your
prefer.
motion.
So what would the wording be with that?
I'd recommend that you grant the waiver condition that the applicant amend the plan shown to move the proposed driveway to the Road H cul-de-sac.
Okay. Does anyone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second, I'll second.
And Greg, are you gonna include in that the number of feet from the intersection?
I can, that was 109 feet. Jason, are you okay with 109 feet?
Yes, that's correct. That's fine.
Okay, I don't want to hem you in if you have to move it a foot closer.
Well, if you want to make it 105 feet to give us some room for the final design, that would be fine. That'd be great.
Is that acceptable, Diane?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make that to 105 feet.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call.
Roll call vote. Dave Dunbar.
Aye.
Ryan Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Aye.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. The next one is number 10.
So number 10 concerns two cul-de-sac bulbs. The one we were just looking at, the extension of Road H, as well as the extension of Road J that I have shown on the screen. The minimum cul-de-sac length is 250 feet. Your ordinance measures that. Most ordinances measure it to the center of the bulb. That your ordinance happens to measure to the beginning of the bulb, so that they actually makes it a little bit longer. We're requesting relief for, and I'll take each one individually just to explain it, but to allow them to be slightly shorter than is noted in your ordinance. Road H, which is the one we were just referring to, is only 3 feet short of that distance. We're kind of tied in. We're limited by site constraints with Cedar Crest Boulevard, the right of way for that, and the extension of the roadway that comes up. How that's routed and it comes into the site. So we're just 3 feet short. There's only 4 units on each cul-de-sac bulb. The driveway you have enough driveway separation distance. So there really isn't an engineering reason why. Tony and I both looked at the liquid fuels requirements for this. Although both of these cul-de-sac bulbs are currently proposed to remain private with the developer, they would both meet liquid fuels requirements should they ever would want to be turned over. If we did have to meet the full 250-foot requirement, again, the lower cul-de-sac bulb is only 3 feet short. I'd probably have to add a small deflection in the intersection, which would make a lot of sense to do on the lower bulb. For the Road J bulb, I'd have to extend the road and move units 35 and 36 to the south. It doesn't really serve a purpose to do that. It would just be building extra road that really wouldn't be utilized by anyone and creating more impervious surface, more stormwater runoff. We would prefer to get the relief. The Road J cul-de-sac is 219 feet and Road H is 247 feet.
And the requirement is 250 feet. Okay.
The requirement is 250 feet measured to kind of the start of the bulb, essentially.
All right. Any comments from the Planning Commission? Questions?
I think this one makes sense.
Any other comments? Okay, anything on the chat room?
I've got nothing in the chat room. I'm going to open it up to the phone callers. Any phone callers with comments, speak now. Hearing none, the chat box is still empty.
Okay.
I do have a question. So Jason, you're saying you could make it code compliant, but it will ultimately be somewhat of a worse design because the roads are going to be a little bit curved a bit more and whatnot.
Right. On the lower cul-de-sac, I could probably introduce a deflection at the intersection to gain my 3 feet because you're held by the street and both streets. But again, we're only talking about 3 feet, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that. Road J, I would have to extend a good distance, but I'd have to drop those 2 units down below that. And I'm not sure what the purpose of the additional road would be in that case, particularly since it meets liquid fuels and you only have 4 units proposed on it with plenty of driveway separation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Make a motion
Okay. And Greg,
for Road J and Road H cul-de-sacs.
Second the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, roll call.
David Dunbar,
Aye.
Brian Hyde,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
Bill McNair,
Aye.
Alan Tope,
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. The next one is number 11. So horizontal curve requirements for 2 curves on Road I.
Yes. So this is, if everyone can see my screen now, Road I, the local road requirement is 150-foot radius here and here, connecting the 2 roadways. In this case, we're asking for relief for a 100-foot radius and a slightly shorter tangent distance, the straight section between the intersection. This is similar to what was requested on the east side of the site. Actually, these radiuses are a bit larger. There was some discussion. This is again based on site constraints, what works best in this location to address the grades on this piece of property, and also it functions as a traffic calming measure, slow folks down around those 2 curves. So there was previously some concern. At one point, we had offered this road for dedication to the township. I don't think there was a great deal of concern about emergency vehicles, but there was some concern about the retaining walls proximity and not wanting to be responsible or maintain that. So the developer has agreed to only from the intersection of Ridge Lane going north. That's the only portion of this that will be offered for dedication. So for this portion of Road I, what we're here discussing, that would stay with the developer.
That has curb and sidewalk, that road?
Yes. Yeah, curb sidewalk on both sides. It's a 28-foot width through this area, this connector road. So it's really a geometric request for relief. We would maintain a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit around the curves. Again, would actually act as traffic calming in that location.
Jason, got a question.
Yes,
would there be standard parking on both sides in this, on one side only, or perhaps no parking along this section?
There would be no parking along this section.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And being that it's a private road, and I'm not sure if you have the answer, I know I don't have the answer, is how is that 15-mile-per-hour enforced? South Whitehall Police allowed to enforce speed limits on private roads? I'm not sure.
I think if they're given permission to do so, which I know the developer has agreed to, they can.
Because I could see that being a fun little chicane for somebody. Try to speed above speeds that be above design speed. Yeah, I think having enforcement be able to occur in that zone would be important.
I think public safety asked that question, and I did confirm with the developer that he's willing to grant that.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. Is this the road that's going to have a large retaining wall on the side of it?
There is a decent amount of grade on this portion of the property, and there is a sizable retaining wall along the south side, which again is one of the reasons why the township was hesitant or suggested that we may want to own and maintain this portion ourselves.
Is there also one on the north side further down?
There is, yes. It's not nearly as large as the one on the south side, but there is one in that location.
Well, I tend to agree with Brian's comment about speeding in that area. I don't know many people who will drive at 15 miles an hour. And that's certainly a concern on a road like that.
Understood. Again, the radiuses are not any in this case aren't any tighter than we proposed on the east side of the project that was approved as part of the conditional use and the previous waivers. It's intended to be more pedestrian friendly and slow traffic down.
Aside from the waiver, is there any consideration? I know there's a retaining wall, like a pedestrian access from the corner closest to your eastern part to like connect. So somebody wouldn't have to walk the whole length if they wanted to get down to the south part of the project, or is the retaining wall too steep to make that happen? Like right in there.
Yeah,
This seems like a good green spot, you know, like do something there.
Yeah, it may be possible. It would probably have to be a switchback trail, but there may be possible to put some kind of a trail connection through it. I know I had some discussion with Park and Rec about some kind of informal trails in a few locations. So we could certainly look at that. But yeah, you definitely have to catch grade to some degree.
Right. Yeah. But it just seems like a good opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And Jason, that large lot there is planned to be dedicated as open space, correct?
It is, but keep in mind it certainly will be open space. It will be steep. It is steep in existing condition. So,
yes.
But that doesn't mean a trail couldn't be routed through it.
Any other questions? Any questions from the chat or phones? See anything, Greg?
Chat box is empty.
Okay.
Throw it open to the phone call. Not hearing anything from the phones either. Chat box is still empty.
Okay. And this is number 11. Anyone want to make a motion? This is for horizontal curves. How does the motion read? Jason, would be horizontal curves. A waiver is requested to reduce the minimum center line radius for a local street to 100 feet in 2 locations. Road I, station 1 plus 50, and Road I, station 8 plus 50.
Right, that's correct, as well as the associated tangent lengths.
And the minimum tangent, a waiver is requested to reduce the minimum tangent between the curve and a street intersection to 60 feet along I at station 0 plus 00.
That's correct.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay. Is that Alan and David?
Dave Dunbar, yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Roll
Roll call vote. David Dunbar.
Aye.
Ryan Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
No.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
David Wilson,
Aye.
motion passes 5-1.
Okay. That was number 11. Now we're going to number 2. And you may want to talk about, I don't know if we can talk about number 3 at the same time.
Yeah, no, it makes sense for them to be discussed together. So we've discussed this a couple times in the past. So this waiver request concerns the length of the cul-de-sac road here. It's 1,144 feet. The notes say 450, but it's the 400 feet is the allowable cul-de-sac length. Number 3 concerns have it, the allowable number of units on a cul-de-sac is 15, and we're proposing 26. So this discussion had started with quite a while back, years back actually, about a potential connection to Valley Forge Road. With Mr. Zader talked about the availability of the easement that was proposed or provided on a record plan here. At one point, there was a kind of a step back, or at least comments that were made early on, very early on, that connection wasn't something that should be necessarily pursued, at least in those early comments. We've discussed this a few times. The last discussion, if I have here, this last time I was in front of you, I had talked to public safety, and one option was a connection, emergency access connection between the 2 cul-de-sac bulbs, which we looked at and figured out we could accomplish here as an emergency access is what they were asking for, as opposed to a true roadway connection between the 2 points, which we couldn't accomplish by grade. So that's kind of where we're at today.
How about Valley Forge Road?
Yeah, Valley Forge Road again is where we had started with this, and I would probably ask Mr. Preston or Mr. Zader to speak to the ability to access out to Valley Forge Road.
Okay, and yes, Mr. Zader, we did have some discussion of this prior to, earlier.
We did, and if Bill, you'd like me to reiterate that, I'll be glad to.
Please.
And then if Mr. Preston has any additional comments, he certainly can join in. When this was first raised as a possible avenue by the Planning Commission, the thought had been that when this adjacent development that contains Valley Forge Road, which is known as Walbert Estates, it was a plan approved back in 1974 or so, in that time frame. The thought had been that perhaps this connection between Valley Forge Road and the property line for that development may have been a roadway stub offered at that time for dedication to the township. And the question became whether it is still available as a possible connection point. If it had been offered for dedication on the plan to the township and not constructed, most of you would be aware that the so-called rule of paper streets would kick in and rights of the township and the public would lapse. They would disappear after 21 years. However, after having pulled the plan and some ancillary documentation, that is not what transpired with respect to the Valley Forge Road stub. Rather, on that plan was simply an easement shown in that area, 60 feet wide. And while I have not finished, and I don't know if Mr. Preston has, going through all the title work and going through all the plan sheets that may have been recorded or on file in the township, just based upon that note alone, there would appear to have been an easement in existence at that time. And there was a subsequent deed of record in the mid to late 1980s, which sought to clarify that easement by stating that it was for the purpose of sanitary sewer connection and also for a possibility of a future road, and actually imposed on the grantee of those rights the obligation to cooperate in dedication of a road right-of-way to the township in the future. And there was a form of that dedication actually attached to the recorded document. So it's a rather unusual circumstance, and much of the factual information I just mentioned has only been discovered in recent days. So it's not been fully analyzed, not fully vetted to confirm one way or the other whether the developer would have a right to make that connection, and ultimately whether there could be a dedication of road right-of-way to the township, whether it be for a full road or emergency access road. It's looking, based on the information so far, somewhat promising, but can't come to a conclusion based on where we're at this moment. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Preston, do you have any other information? Is he still here?
I think he's muted.
I see him on the screen. So he's still here.
Hello?
Can't hear you.
I think he's having microphone problems.
Okay. Wait.
How about that? Are we
Perfect.
good?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Joe and I have been sharing this information, and the document that he's talking about, the deed he's talking about, came from our one of our predecessors in interest, the Bronsteins, at the time when they owned this property, had granted an easement to the adjoiner. This would be 10 years after that road stub was shown on the adjoining plan. This was vacant. They granted, the adjoiner wanted an easement for sewer, and that's essentially what that document was. It does talk about a road connection. Joe's right. It does reference the stub road and sort of clarify what the purpose of the stub road would be. There's the potential that it could be interpreted to allow us as the successors entitled to the Bronsteins to claim the right to go over that particular stub and access Valley Forge Road. An argument could be made probably just as forcefully that it doesn't. And so that really gets, I think, down to the heart of this, that if the township would like to have this connected or to use that connection, we don't have a problem with hooking that up. But the township is in a different position, obviously, than we are with respect to the adjoining property. We do not have the legal tools at our disposal to be able to open that up without question. The township does. We would be happy to pursue it, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, we would need to know that if we're not successful, that then the township would help us to acquire whatever that little piece there, if the township wants to see that connection. I think the argument can go either way as to whether or not we can tie into that. It may ultimately end up in front of a judge. I don't know. There's documents there that can be used to support those arguments. We'll pursue those if the township wants us to do that. I'm not saying to you that that's not something we would do or be interested in doing. But if we were to do that, we would be doing it because this commission thought that it was the correct thing to do. And we would anticipate that if we needed the assistance of the township would provide that assistance.
Okay. My opinion is that one of the goals is to minimize the number of cul-de-sacs, dead ends, and this I think fits that. It's set up to do it, to connect, and I think that's a better option than the cul-de-sacs, and that would eliminate the need for the variances.
Understood.
I concur with that. It just makes street connectivity, more emergency access as a full road, even just.
So that's what I think. Yes.
Yeah. as a Greenewald's fire department responding from Huckleberry Road, if they could get over to Valley Forge Road that much quicker, that just makes sense. And, you know, having that long of a cul-de-sac outside of our ordinance, it's like 286% larger than our Saldo. And, you know, adding twice as many residents, whether they're single family or twins, it's still families in there. And I appreciate the work that went into the emergency access between the two bulbs, but I think just a regular street connection is far preferred. And I just don't like cul-de-sacs that with that many residences. I go back to the Huckleberry Road explosion, gas explosion from 15 years ago, and how the residents on Brickyard Road literally had to drive through the Roots farm to access their residences for a month and a half to almost 2 months. And even though that may be an option for the emergency access between the bulbs, I would still be hesitant about that long of a cul-de-sac. But if we could get that through to Valley Forge, just like you did up at Rural Road or whatever that other road is, that would be my preference. Thank you.
Well, I think that if we weren't 21 years beyond the recording of that plan on the adjacent property, we'd already be tied into that.
Yeah.
But because we don't have that, we're now relying on some alternate theories that are going to require some consideration one way or the other. We're not really, and that's what I think Joe was referring to. We're still looking into that. It's really not that clear cut. It could be clear cut. I mean, if it's obvious that the road's there, was intended to be there, it appears in the plan. It appears in the recorded information of the tracks that surround it. It appears in our record. So everybody knows that the road was intended to be there. It's not going to be a surprise to anybody. But to eliminate a legal contest, I think that's going to require the township to participate, potentially. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But I think in order to seriously consider a redesign or a design that would include that connection, we probably want to know that the township finds that to be important enough to be involved with it.
And I would certainly hope that my fellow planning commissioners would agree that, you know, public safety, health and welfare, street connectivity is part of being good local government. I would hope that the township administration would see it the same way.
Okay, I agree with that.
I agree.
Any other comments? Do we want to make any kind of statement, or
should we take it under advisement, or because if we vote on this waiver now, I'm going to be a no. So it's.
I would say let's not vote on the
right.
The waiver. The planning commission supports pursuing the connection to Valley Forge Road as complete roadways. It would be my. Do we take a vote on that, or I don't know how?
I think it would be.
Table it.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have a vote to say that our preferred route would be a connection to Valley Forge, just so the Board of Commissioners knows where we're standing. If Joe has more he would like to add, that would be great.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. I think that the Board of Commissioners are going to be voting on the waivers. We've been told by the developer their intent is to go to the board, as we know. So I think putting this in the context for consideration by the board would be prudent. I think that by the time this gets in front of the commissioners, perhaps between Mr. Preston and myself, we will figure out the details of the background even a little bit better than we know today. And since Mr. Preston has indicated that depending upon the nature of those details, township involvement may be appropriate or necessary, I think it does need to get to the Board of Commissioners for consideration.
Joe, can I say one thing? Because I think obviously we've moved a few of these over to a future meeting. We've deferred action on several of these. So I think we'll be coming back. And Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're going to be coming back to get this, to complete this list before we go to the board. Maybe we can defer that, get the action that you're asking for at the next meeting. Then we'll probably have a little more information. Because I think what I'm doing is I'm doing Jason's job, and I'm not very good at it. He's going to have to tell me how to hook this up and what can be done. So, Jason, what do you think?
I'm sorry, Jim, can you clarify the question? Well,
What I'm saying is rather than have the board act on this one tonight, we defer this one as we did with numbers 4 and number 8. In other words, we're coming back to this board for further
right,
action.
absolutely. That's certainly fine.
And that way you'll have a time to confirm what I'm saying from an engineering standpoint and talk to the board from maybe have a design that shows a connection or how that would work. And we can have probably a more fruitful discussion at the next meeting.
Okay. That's
What I'm hearing is, I understand it's not committal, and there's no vote. How about a sense of, is there a sense of the planning commission that they would like to see that connection? Is that what we're getting?
And that was my goal with the vote. It would be just so administration, everybody knows that we're
okay.
We're in unanimity of this,
Understood. So that's probably a good idea. Okay. Yeah. Understood.
Okay, so do you want to say your motion again?
I don't even remember what I was motioning. Basically, it would be a motion to have the township administration and the developer team investigate a connection from Road J or similar to Valley Forge and explore the potential of accessing the easement.
It's actually Road J and Road, is it also, is it both of those? Road, what's the other road?
Road J is the obvious choice because that's the one that has the 2 waiver requests on.
Yeah.
It might be a little complicated to get road, what is that, H, involved as well.
Well, that's why I wanted to give Jason a cut at this thing, because I'm not.
Yeah, no, we in the past, we looked at making a connection from Road J to Valley Forge Road. So that can be accomplished. I have to look at it again to see the details of that. There's too much grade with the lower road to connect that as well. But Road J can be connected.
Okay. All right. Road J.
Yep.
A second? Do we hear a second for this?
Second.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. And then a roll call.
Roll call vote. David Dunbar.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
I'm going to vote aye, but I'd also like to ask for both of these cul-de-sacs to be considered to connect, since they're both in the same situation with exceeding the ordinance for the length of the road as well as the number of dwellings on each.
They're not though, Diane. It's only Road J that exceeds both. Road H cul-de-sac is compliant.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was misinformed.
And besides, there's a grade problem.
Yeah.
Right? Is that not correct?
Vertically, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's correct. That it is compliant, and it would be too difficult from a grade point of view to connect the lower cul-de-sac as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
And David Wilson.
Aye.
Okay.
There we go. It's unanimous, 6-0. Motion passes.
Okay. Moving up to the top of the hill for number 9, and this is about offset or the intersection. Road I again.
I'm sorry, I'm working my way up here. Takes a little while to regenerate.
It's a steep hill.
Just a big file, and my computer's getting tired, I think. So we've spoken about this one as well previously. So there's the intersection of Huckleberry and Cedar Crest. The portion of Huckleberry to the east of the Cedar Crest intersection is considered a collector. To the west is considered an arterial. It doesn't function that way, as we've discussed in the past. We're not sure why the distinction is at this intersection, but because it is considered an arterial here, the separation distance from the intersection requires that 800 feet. We're showing 400 feet, which meets the collector road requirement. We've got about 750 feet of frontage, so we couldn't actually meet the 800 feet. We kind of discussed this previously. This is going to be signalized. The traffic engineer looked at stacking, and it only stacks back 120 feet from the intersection here. So we're asking for a waiver for this road I connection, the Huckleberry, and the alternate to if the waiver wasn't granted would be a cul-de-sac terminating here. It really doesn't change the units, number of units, or the layout, but it would force traffic out Ridge Lane, where we think the connection to Huckleberry is better. Parkland wanted a school bus stop here, so we think it makes more sense for just roadway connectivity to have, rather than have another cul-de-sac, to have that connection through. And it appears to be a safe condition. It's a rural portion of the roadway here, and again, we're holding 400 feet on the east side because it's considered a collector on the east side. So this really isn't any different. It would only have less traffic than what the east side would have.
Okay. This one is number 9. Any questions from the Planning Commission?
I'm okay with this because it just allows more street connectivity. Just like their Valley Forge connection, I think this is the way to go.
Any other comments? Any comments from the community?
That box is empty at this point. Let's throw it open to the phone callers. Hearing none from our phone people. I do have a new question popped up. Cindy Smith asks, is there a connecting road between Huckleberry and Walbert? Cindy, do you have anything to add?
I've brought this up numerous times, and my concern is with the amount of congestion if connecting road, Huckleberry, and I realize I'm sure there's going to be major road improvements. I think there needs to be a connecting road between the two.
Okay. Now, are you talking about on the east side of Cedar Crest or the west side?
East.
Okay. I do want to talk about that. We'll bring it up, and it's to basically go through that. There's right now a connection. I forget what we call it. It's some kind of mover or
mobility.
Mobility easement, yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot. Mobility easement, which I think makes more sense to be a road. And I guess I'd like to poll the Planning Commission on that question. That we've talked about this before. we do need to have a conversation about it, but I'd like to get this one done first, where we are, and then we'll get to that, if that's all right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
There's another question. Lee Salt, 3731 Manchester Road. He asks, why can you not move the connector road the west of the last property south onto Huckleberry? Lee, maybe you would want to add something to that?
Yeah, sorry, I was typing quick. So the question I have is, why couldn't you move the road that's connecting to Huckleberry to the west side of the property, the last property there to the, I don't know, whatever road that is, I guess it goes up. Why couldn't you move that over to the backside of that property, move the property to the east to get more distance away from Cedar Crest Boulevard?
It might be possible to move this intersection to some degree further to the west. I guess what I would say to that is, again, we looked at things like stacking from this intersection, and it only stacks back 120 feet, which is only a small fraction of that distance. So there's not necessarily a traffic reason to relocate that access point, but it could be shifted to some degree further west if that was critical, if there was a driving reason. We couldn't push the roadway all the way to the far western end. The lots wouldn't make sense here. We wouldn't be able to front them on that new road. We'd end up probably fronting more lots out on Huckleberry, which I don't think we want. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question.
I'm just, yes, from a design point, it wouldn't be pretty, but it could be done.
Well, yeah, I don't know that we would ultimately pursue it that way, just because of the challenges of trying to do the layout that way. But if there's a driving traffic control reason why that separation distance was necessary, this particular issue is more of a, well, it's more of a continuity issue for traffic, but it's also more of a kind of a quirk in the way the roads in the township happen to change from a collector road where 400 feet is adequate to an arterial at this point, even though functionally they don't really look that way now. This is a rural road through this area.
But it's not going to be. It's going to be a more congested road than it is currently because of all the residents to the east. The more residents you're going to have to the west of Cedar Crest Boulevard, it's not going to be that way anymore.
And the traffic speed, the stacking considers the amount of that traffic that's being added, and it still only stacks back 120 feet.
I understand that. I understand the statistics. I'm just, the logic and the reality is different than the statistics. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
And if I may point out, even to move it as far to the west as possible would still require a waiver, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I would like to just follow up to Lee's point. I agree with him as we talk about development to the west there, and as these homes on the eastern side become residences and people realize that you can use Huckleberry as a shortcut if they're coming from Ridgeview, the stacking on that road is going to become greater, as well as the development of the hills at Winchester that's going to have an exit onto off of Brickyard. It's going to put people on a Huckleberry. I mean, as we look down the road, we're not talking about just traffic today, but also the impact of future developments. And, I've shared this concern before with this particular intersection, as it has to do with the homes on the northern side there with those multiple driveways, as well as this access point now with a school bus stop there as well. Certainly is an area of concern from a safety perspective.
And are you proposing something else or just pointing that out?
I've asked about this in the past, and the developer said there wasn't anything really that they could do, but I'm just letting you know that that is still my concern. My concern has not changed for this particular configuration.
Okay. Any other questions?
Looks like there's one more in the chat box.
Yes, Cindy Smith has a follow-up. Was it decided that a traffic light would be put in at Huckleberry and Cedar Crest?
Yes.
Hi. It was approved?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And that's apparently it.
Okay. So this one is the waiver request number 9 states waiver is requested to reduce the minimum intersection separation distance to 400 feet between Road I and Cedar Crest Boulevard. As this portion of Huckleberry west of Cedar Crest intersection transitions from a collector to an arterial road on the township mapping. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? I'll second.
Hey, roll call vote. David Dunbar.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
No.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1.
Okay. And then if you want to, the last one is the arterial road improvement standards for Huckleberry Road west of Cedar Crest Boulevard.
Yes, so we're looking at the same area here with this request. So this has been modified a couple times based on your comments. So the road itself today is on the order of 24 feet in width. The current proposal would bring it to collector road standards of a 40 foot width, but still provide the 80 feet of right of way that an arterial road would require. We're providing street trees, curbing, sidewalk on the north side. I do recall at our last discussion, although it's not shown here, there was interest in having sidewalk also on the south side as well, at least from the Road I intersection to the Cedar Crest and Huckleberry. I'm not sure where we left off with sidewalk going in the opposite direction. But that's subject to your discussion. But essentially the waiver request is to not meet the full arterial road width, really because 50 feet of pavement here would effectively be creating something similar to what it looks like on Walbert. 40 feet is a great deal of width widening here, and you're providing, again, curb, sidewalk, drainage, street trees, everything else. It just to maintain some semblance of the rural character of Huckleberry, it doesn't seem to make sense to go to a full 50 feet of width. Seems like that that level of improvement here, it seems out of place for what you would want to see at this location. But I'll leave that for you to discuss.
Comments from the Planning Commission?
Are there any turn lanes on Huckleberry west of Cedar Crest?
There aren't. I don't know, Rob. I don't think there's any turn lanes proposed at this point.
No, not on Huckleberry. There's no turn lanes proposed.
Yeah, the 40 feet of width, you certainly could support a turn lanes if someone chose to stripe those out, so the pavement would be there, but the traffic doesn't support turn lanes.
Well, my thought is one day it might be necessary, as we've learned with Ridgeview and Walbert Avenue. They had to restripe that and take out part of the shoulder. And being that the high school is to the north and Kratzer is to the east, that the school buses may use Huckleberry as a corridor, and they might want to make left-hand turns, and that may, while not be necessary at this point, it might be in the future. So I would like enough cartway there in order to facilitate that. And at 40 feet should be able to accommodate that. And I'm on the sidewalk between Road I and Cedar Crest on the south side. Basically, if you're walking from one of those residences south of Huckleberry and you wanted to cross Cedar Crest, you would have to cross Huckleberry, then go down, and then you would have to do. It just makes more mobile sense for the pedestrians if that was connected there. I don't see a necessary need for the going to the west from Road I, as there's no residences down there, and they could anything off the map that's shown can use the sidewalk on the north side. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, and go back to what if we had with 40 feet, can you have a left turn, a straight, and a right turn, as well as a lane coming in?
Yeah, well, you figure even at 12-foot lanes, altogether that would equal 36. You would have like a 2-foot shoulder, so that would be plenty adequate for a turn lane. I don't envision a turn lane would need to be that long, just enough to accommodate 2 school buses. I would imagine, but I think 40 would occur.
Let's a 12-foot lane. You need a lane going westbound too.
Right. So there's 12, 12, and 12.
Well, how about left, straight, and right? Or do you?
I would think it would be just a straight or right hand turn, and then a dedicated left turn lane.
Okay.
To facilitate traffic to the high school and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
just thinking out.
I agree. Okay.
So you would 2 lanes going east and 1 lane going west.
Right. So you would have a through lane that would also serve as the right turn lane, and then you would have a dedicated left turn lane.
Okay.
There's 80 feet of right of way too.
Right. But if they're going to build it to 40 feet standard, that we don't have to dig up sidewalk and curb and because 50 does seem a little wide. I mean, it'd be nice to have it, but I'm also looking at pedestrians crossing that road. It's just more of a safer.
Okay.
And
yeah, it's a residential neighborhood.
All right. And if it needs to be, it matches the other side also at that, or if anything, it's probably a little wider than the other side at 40 feet. Okay.
Yeah, and that was my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. My concern was an additional. Do you want to have a right turn lane so you don't hold people up? And I'm okay. It's just thinking out loud. Okay. So now, what does so we said this road would be to collector road standards. What's the waiver requested here?
Yes, effectively collector road standards, but with providing right of way for the arterial requirement.
Okay.
I'd like to see the sidewalk too from I to Cedar Crest on the south side.
I would also.
Yep. On the south side.
Yes, it's already. So, all right.
Bill.
Yeah.
They are dedicating right of way to arterial, so that's the full 80 feet. If we need to widen the road in 50 years, all we'd have to do is dig up the curb, possibly the trees and the sidewalk, and widen the road. The houses there will not be impacted by that sort of thing. So that's a good thing. My only question is, and I'm just throwing this out there, should we establish the sidewalk at the arterial standard rather than the collector standard? That pushes the sidewalk out another 5 feet to either side, gives you about 11 feet between the curb and the sidewalk. And that way, in the future, if the road does need to be widened, at least you won't have to chew up the sidewalk as well. Just a thought.
Okay, so you're making it a little bit wider?
Just moving the sidewalk out to where it would be if it were at an arterial road standard, which is 1 foot from the property line.
Which is effectively what I'm showing now on the north side.
So do the same thing on the south side? Okay.
Excellent point, Craig.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I agree. All right. Now, the waiver you have in there also brings up another question. You're also talking about the 8-foot wide asphalt walking path running north-south. And I know there's a question about that asphalt versus concrete.
Bill, can we wait on that one?
Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with this particular waiver.
No, they have it in this waiver on number 5 in their request. That's why
I think I only brought that up in the waiver request as just a modification in this immediate area that was asked of us while in conjunction of discussing this.
Okay.
So it's not really part of the waiver, just a point that we added this. So.
We'll deal with that separately, okay? If that's all right with you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think do you have the information you need, Greg? We'll make this to arterial standards, but also with the sidewalk. Well, you want to say it?
Yes. This is granting a waiver to the appropriate sections. Oh boy. If you want to be specific, requiring an arterial right-of-way dedication, the improvements to collector road standards, with the exception of the sidewalks, shown to arterial standards on the north side and the south side from Road I to Cedar Crest Boulevard only. The sidewalk west of Road I on the south side would be deferral.
Okay.
And actually that let's just say that it's not a waiver of the standards, it's a deferral of the standard.
Okay, good. Does somebody want to make that motion?
Before we do a motion, do we want to address this a few comments in the chat?
Okay, yes.
Yes. All right, so we've got Manley Offit. He asked of 1991 Molinaro Drive, and he says, can I have a brief definition of what an arterial road is and what a collector road is? Tony?
Sure. Every township assigns a hierarchy of roads. I believe it starts with something like an expressway. Then it goes to arterial, a collector, then a local. And what that does is it tries to direct traffic, from the residential or the local streets onto a larger street, which will funnel to an arterial and then to an expressway. So it tries to get you driving, if you're trying to either enter or exit the township, it's trying to put you on roads that are built for that standard. Now, what that means is each road has a different required cartway and different required right-of-way. In this case, the arterial is, they want a 50-foot cartway, 80-foot right of way versus collector, which is, I believe, a 70-foot right of way and a 40-foot cartway. So what they're asking, since it was determined on the township, the street map of the township official map, it was determined that Huckleberry west of Cedar Crest is this arterial. They would have had to build a 50-foot road. They are asking for a waiver for a smaller cartway, so 40-foot instead. If a local road, I believe, is less than that, I think 30 feet, if not 25. So what that is, so it's just a type of, it's a classification of roadway, and it brings with it different require right of way, cartway width. Hopefully that helps.
That work, Manley?
Yeah, as I understand what he said is a arterial road is a bigger road or a heavier traveled road than a collector road.
Correct.
Correct.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and then we have Cindy Smith of Huckleberry Road. She says, I see a problem with cars going east on Huckleberry Road crossing Cedar Crest, but if there's a light, I guess that will work.
And I
Cindy,
agree with
do you
you.
have any follow-up there?
Hi, sorry, me again. Big problem in that intersection, no matter what direction you're coming from, because I worked at El Tracy, Huckleberry Road, turn left onto Huckleberry, and there's cars on the other side of Huckleberry that are trying to get out. So it's like just a big cluster of cars there. So that's my main concern. It's trying to cross over, trying to turn right, just being there, and there's not enough space for the cars behind me to get around them when they're out partially on Cedar Crest Boulevard. Thank you.
Okay, but there is a light with this.
There's not now, but if there is one, I'm saying I guess that might work, but right now it's not working.
Understood, but there
In
will
my
be a
opinion.
light, I should say. The plan has a light.
And will they broaden the road though?
Yes.
Getting widened, it's about
That
24
entire
feet.
intersection is being improved in conjunction with the signalization.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Okay.
And that's it for the chat box. Any comments from the phone callers? I don't hear anything.
Okay, does somebody want to make the motion then?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
All right,
That was-
roll call vote. David Dunbar,
Aye.
Ryan Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
Bill McNair,
Aye.
Alan Tope,
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay. Now I want to move across across Cedar Crest, and I want to get to your I always forget the name of it. The
Mobility.
mobility.
Bill, before you do that, I think you have one more waiver to consider yet. Did you want to do that one first? I don't think we hit number 3, did we?
Yes, we did.
We did?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe I'm
Okay. So you did that, you combined that vote with the 1 then? Is that what you're?
I think we did combine. Yes, we combined 2 and 3.
Okay, okay. I didn't have it that way, so.
Okay.
But the number of units on the street was included in that.
Yes, and we actually tabled that. It was actually, the motion was to have the township and the developer investigate the connection from Road J to Valley Forge Road. That's what the actual vote was. So we tabled the actual two waivers.
Yeah, thank you for that, Greg. I just wanted to make sure I had it clear.
Okay.
Moving forward.
We get that the waivers aren't needed.
Right. Bill.
Yes.
I've got a request. Before we move to the mobility easement, can we address the trails, the concrete, and the right-of-way improvements to Cedar Crest
Okay.
and Walden?
Okay.
Jason.
Yes.
I'm not seeing any right-of-way improvements, especially to Walbert. Obviously Cedar Crest as well. Were there going to be waivers or deferral requests on those, or how were you going to handle that?
What right-of-way improvements are you specifically referring to?
Well, the Saldo improvements for one. You know, sidewalk, curbing, street trees.
Well, we're certainly providing, like the alternate to the sidewalk here was the pedestrian path, which was what was included in the conditional use application and what was approved as part of that application. You know, trees, I don't have a landscape plan in front of me now, but I'm sure there's trees proposed along the frontage.
Actually,
So,
there's not. If you check your packet, Shade Tree reviewed it, and they are requesting that trees be placed along Cedar Crest and Walbert.
okay, well, we'll certainly comply with. I don't think I have to look at Shade Tree. That must be a new one I haven't seen yet, but we'll certainly comply with Shade Tree as far as providing street trees. So I don't think that's an issue.
So I guess my question is, you know, you're providing a pedestrian path, but it is not to the Saldo standards of right-of-way improvements, either for Cedar Crest or Walbert, particularly because the pedestrian path proposed is on private property, not within the right-of-way. So I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm simply saying that because you're not proposing the standards within Saldo, I'm asking you how you're going to address that.
Okay, I'll have to think about that. I mean, what if there's if you want to offer an opinion, I mean, we could obviously look at moving the pathway into the right of way if you think that's a better solution. I think we're willing to take our cues from what you're looking for.
It looks like there's a nice lawn for the trees right now, the way in this little drawing that you have up.
Yeah, we could certainly add street trees, and that's if that's something the Shade Tree is looking for along that frontage, we can certainly provide that. The streetscape improvements kind of came out of our planner working with the township on those conditional use plans, and we reflected what was shown and discussed at that point.
I would prefer concrete opposed to asphalt. It's much more durable. Doesn't generate as much heat if people are walking on it.
Right, and again, we're reflecting what was decided. The 8-foot paths where asphalt is what was decided as part of the conditional use process and their location. So I can certainly, if there's a recommendation, we can certainly look at alternatives, but that's where it came from.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't have much of a problem with it. Obviously, I think we need more trees in that area, and the street trees would, take care of that. The walking path could be either concrete or asphalt. in my opinion, either way works because it will be maintained by the HOA regardless. But either way, we have to document what's proposed and weigh that against what Saldo states. And if you need a waiver of the sidewalk because we're now building an 8-foot path on private property, I think that's what we need to do. So I'm just throwing that out there. If that's what you're proposing, we need to address it with some sort of waiver or deferral on the thing it's replacing within the right of way.
Okay, I understand. And yeah, I mean, this was, again, generated out of the conditional use process. If that requires a waiver to cement that, then we can certainly handle that request. And again, I don't think street trees are an issue. They'll be provided. So
right. If you can do a, you're obviously coming back. Perhaps you could do a quick mock-up of what the streetscape should look like based on the sketches that were provided during the conditional use process. I think that might be helpful.
okay, we can do that.
And
Okay,
Greg,
good.
if you could get us the conditional use section that pointed that out, that's.
Yeah, and if there's the pedestrian. So, and there was a pedestrian circulation plan that was included in the conditional use package. I took a look at it earlier. I just have too many things open on my screen, I think, at this point. But that's where it specified the asphalt pathways that were 8 feet wide, the ones that were 6 feet wide, and the other 5 foot wide concrete sidewalk, and where each was proposed. We tried to be consistent with that.
I like the 8-foot width on that walking path along Albert Avenue.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, particularly if you're going to get bicycle traffic on it. 8 foot definitely gives you more room.
Okay.
And Greg, could you also forward the township standard construction details that involve sidewalks and trails and the asphalt trail pavement section, recreational trail cross section, that stuff? That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that one does specify asphalt.
Okay.
So if we switch to concrete, we may need a waiver to actually upgrade it.
Okay. All right. So that'll be another item that we have to do the next time, going through that. Can we move to the mobility area? And we heard some comments tonight, and I think it makes sense in general, is that this was originally, I don't know if it was exactly this way, but I think it was very close to this, except that it was a road, which asked for a waiver, which we did not grant in, I think, I don't know if it was September, a year ago, something like that. So I want to bring that up again. What does the Planning Commission think of going back to that and saying that's this overall plan would be better with a road there? That's my opinion.
My initial vote was against the road because of the ADA, the grade of the ADA to match the road, and there was no accommodations for you're dealing with an age 55 and over community, and they're going to want to go down to the shops and restaurants that are along Walbert Avenue. And I asked multiple occasions to accommodate access that meets ADA, not just have it match the road. There are ways to do it. There's a great example of it on Petronia Road by the Springview Apartments. Take a ride down there. You'll see how they did like a switchback just to get it down to the grade. It can be done, but at that point, the answer that was given to me was, we're going to have it match the grade of the road, and that bothered me dealing with an older population. That's why I voted against it back in September of 19 or whatever that date was. So that's my background.
Okay. Any other comments?
I don't have my notes with me from last year's meeting, but certainly similar to Brian's concerns was the grade of that road, and it was certainly a public safety issue. The Saldo, I believe, is a 6% grade, and that wasn't what was proposed there. I believe it was 9.5%. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely some issues there that had happened.
Okay, I want to be clear here that Brian's specifically talking about the walking path, and not necessarily the road.
The road, the road did not bother me. The grade of the road didn't bother me. We got higher grades. It was the matching of the pedestrian access, the sidewalk, along, having it match the same grade as the road. There are ways to have flat areas, and I forget the term. It's too late. I'm mind shot, but there are ways to accommodate that you can have the sidewalk at a different grade, and that was my main concern. The road itself, we have other roads that are, if not worse, but it was mainly the insistence that the sidewalk would match the road, and that I had the biggest problem with.
Okay. What do other people think?
This is Dave. So my opinion is, if we do not have a road there, people that live in those homes on the north side of the ridge, if they want to go down to the mixed-use development, they're going to have to get onto Huckleberry and loop around about 2 miles, and then travel through the residences and go through Walbert and then into the mixed-use development. So in my opinion, having a vehicle connection between the residences and the mixed-use development makes sense. It is a little bit steeper, but there are township roads and state roads that are steeper than what this road would be. It would make it safer if it has full width, has curb. That would make it easier, especially during winter times. If there's concern about school buses and whatnot, it does not have to be on a school bus route. So those are my opinions. I know there's been comments about congestion on roads off of Huckleberry. So if we don't provide that connection, it's just going to push more traffic into the other roads.
Okay. Thanks, David. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have a couple. First off, by not having that road, what you really do here is you have two separate developments. You've got the residential portion at the north end and the commercial portion at the south end, with some residential, obviously. So you've kind of split the project into two separate developments, number one. Number two, to my way of thinking as a planner, it makes sense to have a road in there that would tie the two pieces together. And thirdly, on the issue of grades, all you have to do is look at Valley Forge Road. The grades on that are certainly far steeper than the grades on this are likely to be, as originally proposed by the developer. So I think, to me, it makes sense. And frankly, the fourth thing is you've now provided another vehicular pathway from Walbert up to Huckleberry. So we've got another path for some of the north-south traffic. People may or may not choose to use it, but at least the pathway is there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Dave Dunbar?
I've always felt that the two communities should be connected. So I agree with what Alice just said, but I'm sympathetic about the pathway for people that Brian was talking about, and maybe there may be a way to handle that. Brian, you're suggesting there is a way to handle that.
And what he's saying is a path the walkway doesn't have to follow the roadway necessarily.
Right.
It doesn't have to follow the same grade. It can be a separate entity and accommodate the ADA requirements.
It doesn't have to be direct. It can wind around even.
Or have a switchback, and there's multiple options.
Sure.
Like I said, take a look at the Citronia Road, Springview Apartments in the upper Macungie portion. Right along the road, you can see how they did it. So it can be done.
Okay, so I've heard.
Creativity.
I'm sorry.
Creativity.
Okay, I've heard people say that they would support. They're looking for a pedestrian way to support ADA requirements, and could go with a variance or a waiver on the road slope. Diane, you may have a different opinion, I think, on that. Or I don't know.
If we're talking about accommodating for ADA on, with switchback for the walkways, certainly we can ask the developer to change the slope of the road to meet, what we've got in Valley Forge is not this type of density that's going to be on that small road. There's certainly apples and oranges in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. You guys have a different view.
It's a road with a grade. And that's been your whole point much of the time.
With a pretty steep grade, yeah.
Okay. Jason, what do you think you could do? That you had a road in there before, and when the waiver was not granted, the road turned into the people mover, or the
mobility easement.
Mobility easement. If the could you do? What I'm trying to find out what you're thinking. You changed drastically with that non-waiver. What would it take to bring the road back?
It would be a meaningful design modification to bring the road back, because when we disconnected the two, we changed the approach.
Yeah, but we did say that the whole time. We said, to make that available, and that was included in the conditional approval as well.
Understood. But it would still be a meaningful change to make it a connection similar to the way it was proposed originally. So we got, we can certainly, Jim and I can certainly bring it to the developer if there's support from the planning commission and the board to go that route.
It seems like there's, yeah, okay.
It would still need to be a grade similar to what was proposed previously, which is still flatter than what's out on Huckleberry today, what's out on Cedar Crest today. But yeah, that's, so I think we'll have to take back to the developer whatever you prefer, or whatever comments you have.
And I think you've heard them. We're looking to. It would be a better project to have that a road connection there, which you had in the beginning, and that there needs to be a pedestrian walkway that doesn't, and that's not necessarily. It'd be great if the road was that too, but in my mind, they don't have to be the same. You know, you can have them go on separate paths.
They're not married necessarily.
Jim, do you want to offer any comments as it relates to this? Mr. Preston?
Yeah, actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the only comment is that I really don't have any comment. This is something that we're going to have to talk to the owner about. If you recall, we had tried very hard to get the road connection in there, and we were unsuccessful. And so the plan, I think, I don't want to speak for Jason, but it was designed the way that it is now. I don't know what's involved in redesigning the plan. I couldn't tell you that. I hear what you're saying, but I don't think there's anybody from our side at this meeting that has the ability to say yay or nay on that. We can take that back and see how far we get with that.
Okay. Can you do that?
Absolutely, we can do that. And so just so I understand what's being suggested is that I see on that plan, I see that gray line, which is now is currently a mobility easement. That gray line, I suspect, would just become a road, and it would
Yes.
need waivers from the slope requirements in order to become a road, and that it would also be anticipated that there would be a walkway that's not necessarily, that doesn't follow that grade, but uses some other device to come down at a less steep angle to
Yes.
get to point A to B.
Yeah. And keep in mind that the conditional, and I mean, I think I'm saying this, that the conditional use, what's that called?
Conditional use approval.
Approval included keeping that available as a roadway to be completed later. So the plan should be able to accommodate that road in my mind,
Well, I think it can accommodate a road, and that's something I'll have to look at, and maybe I'll talk to Joe about that, because I know we do have that prior plan, the plan that everybody's familiar with over there was the precursor, the necessary predicate for the conditional use. So that everything that was on that plan was then embedded into the conditional use. I was thinking about that when you were talking about the frontage improvements along Walbert. I remember that we spent some time going back and forth with your designers. We had some streetscapes, we had to submit drawings, plans were reviewed. So a lot of those design details were embedded in the conditional use decision. I have to take a look at that. You're right. I know there's a condition that says it's at some point that has to be able to be opened if the township wanted that opened. You're right. I do recall that.
And I'm suggesting that at some point is now.
Okay.
Is the way so is that clear? I appreciate everybody taking this much time. I think it's time to we did get through everything. We weren't perfect.
There are some comments.
Okay, yes, we will do that. Let's look at the
that
comments.
Now? All right.
Yes.
I'm going to start up here with, actually, I'll start with Lee Stolt because this one was not mentioned. He does state that all sidewalks and pedestrian paths should be concrete for durability and aesthetics. And that goes back to the prior.
Okay.
The next one, David Burke. Question, why do you want to deviate from the 6% grade of Saldo? What is the justification for that? What is the justification for creating a potential safety problem in the winter? And David, do you have any more to follow up on that?
No, I think it's self-explanatory, but I do think 2 years ago, the Planning Commission ruled against the through road for those very reasons. After all, we don't live in California where we live in the northeast of the United States where we have snow, ice, and so forth going through a development. While somebody mentioned that Valley Forge is like this, well, this probably has 80 times the density of Valley Forge, and the number of cars going up there, and I'm sure there are school buses that'll be going up there as well. So I don't understand why you're deviating from the original ruling of the Planning Commission a year and a half ago. Thank
And
you.
the reason, okay, and the reason is because of traffic. It would help alleviate traffic.
Alleviate which traffic?
North-south.
Yeah, and the real problem you have here is there is no good solution, because the real root cause of the problem is 800 homes on that hill. Okay, that's the real problem.
Okay. You were asking for the justification. I just thought I'd give it to you. Okay.
Right. But the root cause of the problem, and the reason why this is going back and forth, is because you've got a tremendous amount of density up there, both of cars, automobiles, and homes.
Okay.
Yep. I'd like to clarify my thoughts on this. You know, my thoughts are, you know, right now it shows a mobility easement. In my opinion, having a road there opposed to mobility easement is safer because it's going to be more durable. It'll be built to the township standards opposed to a narrow mobility easement. I know there's been complaints about roads being too narrow. I'd rather have a wide road there opposed to a narrow mobility easement. And then the traffic items we previously discussed.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Excuse me, but my understanding of a mobility easement was not a road that allowed cars on it or automobiles, correct?
It would allow emergency access for emergency vehicles, fire engines and the like.
Right. But I don't think that's what the gentleman was referring to just previously.
Well, people, it may be just called a mobility easement, but people may end up using it. If there's a chain there, people may remove the chain, who knows? So.
Doesn't sound like that's a lawful thing to do, but.
Okay. Monica Hodges.
Yes, Monica Hodges, she says, please do not grant the waiver for the access easement / road. Very dangerous grade for both walking path and road, especially in bad winter weather conditions, unless the grade is less than 6%. The grade on my street is 9% and it is treacherous in bad weather. And we don't even have the housing numbers / residents / visitors that this area will have. Unsafe for seniors as well as young pedestrians and drivers. Okay. And then Dave Burke responds with another, while you use Valley Forge as a comparison, it is not the same. The density here and the traffic density are many, many times more than at Valley Forge. And then Lee Solt states, our resident safety must come before convenience. And then finally, Monica Hodges continuing, many citizens were against the original 9.5%, so it wasn't approved back in 2018. I've invited all the commissioners to my home during the next snow / ice storm in the past, so we can all see the conditions. Add the density of Ridge Farm and it will be even more unsafe.
Okay. Thank you. Well, the pedestrian part would be at a lesser slope. That's what we were pointing out. Okay. Anything else?
Nothing from the developer, no.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Dave Dunbar.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Aye.
Bill McNair.
Aye.
Alan Tope.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
6-0, the ayes have it.